Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you to the November 19th Special Finance and Audit Committee meeting. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk this morning will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Today's Special Finance and Audit Committee meeting will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. As the province is in Phase 3 of the reopening plan, question period has been reinstated for those in attendance for agenda items only. The question period sign-up sheet is on the table by the double doors to my left. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. And at the start of question period, I will call those who have signed up to the podium to address council. And the first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry, we have none this morning. Motion for adoption of the agenda. Moved Councillor Bonner, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favour? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. We have no minutes to adopt. And we do have a few presentations and reports this morning, though. Ms. Mercer, please, the 2022-2026 draft financial plan recap. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Today's presentation, I'm going to start with doing a recap of the decisions that were made last Wednesday and show the impact on the tax rate as well as a single-family home. And then we'll go into the decision slides where we left off last Wednesday at we left off at number 8, so we'll start with number 9. Number 8 was the Truth and Reconciliation Day, and so if there wasn't any more discussion on that slide, we'll just move to number 9. And at the end of all of the slides, the committee will have an opportunity to discuss any items you wish to have discussed at that point. Can I have the PowerPoint up? Thank you. So the first item that was decided upon was the Parkade Security Plan, and that's been added to the plan. Funded from Parking Reserve Fund, so there's no tax impact to that one. The second one was extending the Community Clean Team pilot project to the end of 2022, and that's funded from the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve, so there's no tax implications there. The manager for Viera was added effective February 1st, 2022, and we expect additional revenues that will outweigh the cost of the position. So that results in a 0.09% tax decrease. And then the fourth item that was decided upon was to keep the snow and ice control budget at the 2021 levels at $880,000. So that was a $95,000 reduction to the budget at approximately a 0.08%. So those were the ones that were decided upon last week. So our revised tax increase is we still have a 1% for general asset management and a 3.1% general property tax increase. So that's a reduction of 0.2%, and that's where we come up with our new revised rate. And so I'd just like to note that the changes that were made on last week also had an impact on 2023. So we originally started with 3.5% increase for 2023, and based on the changes, it's now 3.6%, so it went up 0.1. So just as a note, so positions, because they're not all a full year in 2022, any positions that are added will have a slight impact in 2023 because we have to pick up the remaining portion of the full year cost in 2023. So the impact on a typical house with an assessed value of $544,227 is a homeowner would pay $2,389 for 2022, and that's a $95 increase over 2021 for a 4.1% tax increase. So that's a $3 reduction since last week's presentation. Water fees and sewer fees will stay the same at $32 and $6 respectively, and sanitation fee will increase to $12 per year, which is the same as last week, and that includes the $8 for the change in the reception facility. So that's an overall increase of $145 over 2021. And again, that's before any homeowner grant is claimed. So that's it for the summary, and we'll now I'll skip to slide number 9, and once I've done them all, we can circle back to the top. So just give me a second to get to that. Okay. So included in our current draft financial plan is $500,000 for the construction of the Buttertubs pedestrian bridge. And current feasibility report that was done estimates the cost of construction at between $1 and $1.5 million. So there is included in your agenda package is a information report that provides additional information on the background for this project. So there's two options available for council. And the first one is to remove the project, and that would leave that $500,000 funding available to fund something else, another project. Or option 2 is to make no changes to the plan. We do know that additional funding will be required to move forward, and so that may involve reprioritizing or canceling other projects, but staff would return to a future meeting with an update of costs once they've been further refined. So those are the two options available for this project. If there's any discussion.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. But removing this project, although it would make funding available for other projects, it would not impact taxation.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Your Worship, may I suggest that the Engineering Department speak to this item?
Sorry?
Can I ask that the Public Works Department speak to this item, since it's their issue? Thank you.
Mr. Rosen or Mr. Sims?
Thanks, Your Worship. I'll pass it over to Mr. Rosen, but I think you can read in the information report, it seems, our suggestion would be to defer the project work with the developer, but Mr. Rosen can get into a little bit more detail there.
Mr. Rosen, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Your Worship and Council. I can provide a little bit more context to help support Council in this decision. So as I'm sure you recall, in May, Council added funding for this project to the financial plan and to move forward with the Buttertubs Bridge. Now that bridge, it's an important link in the off-Bowen Bikeway, which will become a primary cycling route alternative to Bowen Road. It'll link much of the city north of Bowen Road with VIU in the south. Now, if we could have attachment A possibly to the report. So this is attachment A to the report, and it shows the proposed alignment of the off-Bowen Bikeway, and it shows the proposed location of the Buttertubs Bridge. After Council added the funding in the spring, staff completed a feasibility assessment of the bridge, and there are some significant challenges with the currently available location, including poor soils, which means significant foundation requirements, the alignment and the span of the bridge. Because of the angle the bridge is on relative to the water course, it increases the span and the length of the bridge, so that increases the cost, obviously. The vertical height requirements, because of the elevation of the approaches, the bridge has to be lifted up quite a bit higher, and we all know the importance of having the right clearance of bridges. We want to make sure we have a 1 in 200 year clearance for this bridge. So all that adds substantially to the costs. There may be an alternative location that we could have a bit more favorable soils, so a little bit more straight alignment off of the end of Fuller Street. It would shorten the span, and it may have more favorable soils. The challenge with that location is it's not entirely compatible with the private property on the Buttertubs side. So we know that they're interested in redeveloping their supportive housing, seniors housing complex, and they've put in grants in the past. And if they're successful in the future, we could partner with them to look at a different alignment, which could be quite a bit more cost effective and more straightforward from all those challenges I'd pointed out earlier. The downside is we would have to wait to partner with them likely, and it could be a couple of years before we could implement that alternative location. So that would be our recommendation, is given the costs and that opportunity that we pause the project for a while. Hopefully that opportunity plays out. Staff would like to carry out a bit more due diligence on that alternative location just to make sure that is as favorable as we expect. And then once we know a little bit more about that feasibility and the timing and the partnership with that private property, we would bring back a decision for council to consider it at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Rosen. I take it what you're really telling us is this isn't the optimum location, but would satisfy the needs of the lane, so to speak. But we may well be better to wait for a contribution, if you will, from the redevelopment of butter tubs. Is that?
I think what we're saying is it can be done here. It's just a bit more expensive than we would optimally like to see a bridge of this nature. We think we can get more value if we can partner with this private property and just wait a bit.
Thank you. In order, Councillors Bonner and Turley.
Thank you, Worship. So in the event that we don't build this bridge, we're still stuck with bikes trying to get around the Millstone River Bridge at Courtaway, at the pub there. So is there an alternate route so that the bike riders don't have to spend as much time on Bowen? So coming down, say, one of these side streets?
Through your worship, Councillor Bonner, the off-Bowen Bikeway is continuing to be built in segments. As you know, the section on Boxwood North near the Midtown Gateway is going to come to fruition in 2022. You know, there's bits and pieces that we've already built. It'll be some time before we're able to complete the entire thing and have like a contiguous alignment there. One of the things that has come up fairly recently is the Midtown Water Supply project is presenting a bit of an opportunity to add a trailway to the surface of that alignment. They're planning to construct a bridge on the east side of the parkway over the Millstone. So that presents an opportunity to cross the Millstone, not exactly where people necessarily want to be to travel from sort of north to south, but if we can leverage that opportunity, it may take some pressure off of this Buttertubs Bridge location. In the meantime, people will have to cross the Quarterway Bridge for the most part, which you're absolutely right. It's not super convenient, but that's really the only option right now.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship. To you and Mr. Rosen, or anybody else who wants to answer it. This is just probably a reflection of my misunderstanding of the whole scenario. And that's the issue of riparian zones. So if a building was to be put there, they're within the inside of the riparian zone and they wouldn't be allowed to. But construction of a bridge is, there obviously is different rules and regulations around infrastructure than there is around buildings. I don't know if you have any comments.
Through your worship, Councillor Turley, certainly there is legislation and rules around the construction of any works in and about a stream. A bridge is no different. So there are certain setbacks from the high water in terms of habitat as well as sort of like flood flow clearance. So there are rules, but they're not the same as constructing a house, for example. So there are rules, but they're not quite the same.
Thank you.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. Would now be the appropriate time to make a motion? Or do we want to wait until after?
Sorry?
Would now be the appropriate time to make a motion? I would like to move to remove this from the 2021-2025 budget. Sorry, I'm going to get those figures wrong.
The recommended motion.
Thank you.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. Do you want to speak to it?
Briefly, I'll just say it looks to be 2 to 3 times more than we initially costed it at. There's an opportunity with a potential private partnership that's going to give us a better product in the end, so I'm content to wait given the financial restraints we're under.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. I'm also going to support the motion, even though this is a key part of the structure that we need to get to bypass Bone Road for people riding bikes and walking for that matter. The rest of it's not done either. So I don't mind delaying it and we can do them all together in a couple more years. And I'll just battle the people on Bowen. We're all good.
I'm inclined to agree with the previous speakers. I think that staff's recommendation is the appropriate one in this case, that it's a nice to, but it's not a have to. And we have a number of have tos, I think, that we have to consider this morning. All those in favor? Any contrary? I see none. Thank you very much. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Rosen. Ms. Mercer?
Thank you. So the next 4 slides speak to the 4 options available for the Alberton 4th Complete Street Phase 2 project. So the current cost estimates, based on current cost estimates, additional funding and direction is required. So I will go through all of the options, and then I'll give Mr. Rosen a chance to give you some more information on that. So the first option is to reduce the scope of the project and increase the budget. So we would reduce the scope to Pine Street to Milton Street and increase the project budget by $400,000. And that would be funded from the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve. So none of the 4 options have a tax impact. It's just strictly on reserves. Our second option is to increase the budget and proceed with option A, and that's bike lanes uphill only. So we would increase the budget by $800,000, again funded from the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve, and proceed with option A for the Dunsmuir Street to Kennedy Street section. Option 3 is to increase the budget and proceed with option B, so that's bike lanes in both directions. And again, the project would be increased by $800,000 funded from the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve, and you would proceed with option B for the Dunsmuir Street to Kennedy Street sections. And option 4 is to remove the project, so that would keep these funds available for other projects, and that's approximately $900,000 in water reserves and approximately $1.4 million in general reserves. So I'll pass it over to Mr. Rosen to provide you with some more information on this project.
Mr. Rosen.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Alberton 4th Street Complete Street project, it's a little bit of a complex or multi-layered decision here, as Ms. Mercer pointed out. If I could have attachment A for this report, please. Thank you. So the VIU downtown bikeway, it's a cycling link that's been identified in the Nanaimo Transportation Master Plan. It's probably the most favorable link between VIU and downtown, given the lower traffic volumes, the fairly reasonable grades, and the directness of it. So that's why this particular corridor, as opposed to 3rd or 5th, has been sort of the focus of efforts in recent times. This route has been added to over the years, and the latest section from Harewood to Pine Street, it's scheduled for construction later this year. The tender just closed on it, and it looked favorable, so that should be moving forward fairly quickly. The section from Pine into the downtown, now that's a priority for council, and funding was allocated to advance that and build it over the 2021-2022 timeframe. The design work on that has progressed well. However, there's some challenges with the S-curve that necessitate rebuilding the road, potentially with a retaining wall. Could I have attachment B, please? The costs of dealing with this S-curve, they're about $800,000 higher than previously expected. However, the S-curve is probably the greatest concern for cyclists, given the horizontal alignment changes as well as the narrowness of the road. It tends to be the most challenging for cyclists. So enhancing that provides the most value as well. In addition to the increased funding requirement, there's the question of what the road could or should look like between Kennedy and Dunsmuir. So that question about whether we do bike lanes on both sides or we do a shared lane on the downhill, I'll get to that in a moment. So we have 2 options for council. So we have option A, which is a bike lane on the uphill side only, and then option B, which is bike lanes in both directions. Could I have attachment C, please? Well, with option B, parking would need to be stripped from Albert Street. Now, based on our analysis of parking demand in the area, the removal of parking on Albert would displace that demand to the side streets, pushing them to near the capacity. So when you get to that demand on parking, it can be really hard to find a parking space. So essentially we'd be saturating out the parking on the side streets by choosing that option. We did some public consultation on this, and the suggestion is that there's a preference for option A, which retains some parking. So given that this is a fairly multi-layered decision, I'll phrase the question, I'll phrase it in a way that there's a couple of simple questions for council to consider. So the first question is, does council want to continue with the project at this time? So assuming the answer is yes, does council want to add an additional $400,000 in funding, but terminate the project at Milton? So that means we would do the S-curve, which is the most valuable to the cyclists. It's the most challenging and so on. And then does council want to add an additional $800,000 and then complete the project as it was originally envisioned? If council does want to do that, is there a preference for option A or option B? So happy to take some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rosen. In order, Councillors Brown, Turley, and Martman, and Bonner.
Thanks, Your Worship.
And Your Worship, Council Gesselbrock as well, too, just.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Gesselbrock. Yes, good morning.
Thank you, Worship, through you to Mr. Rosen. Just curious, with respect to the parking, was a bi-directional bike lane contemplated on one side?
Through your worship to Councillor Brown, certainly all the options in terms of how to address the cycling facility were reviewed. I'm not entirely sure why that option was discarded, but it can be quite challenging to have bicycles transit across the road. So getting them safely back and forth across the road can be quite a challenge. So that might be why that particular alignment was, or that particular option wasn't carried forward. And also further, I guess, west on Albert, as you go down the hill and so on, there'll be cycling facilities on either side of the road. So matching up with that is also a fairly important piece.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Rosen. So are any of these sections in a situation where the underground infrastructure, water, sewer, storm drain, in need of replacement?
Through your worship to Councillor Turley, yes, the piece up the S-curve is concurrent with drainage upgrades. So the culvert across where the road crosses the Cat Stream, that's being upgraded, as well as some water main upgrades through the S-curve. However, the stretch down the hill into the bowl, so from sort of Kennedy down, that's really just surface works. So there's no utilities associated with that piece.
Thank you.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. When it says that we save 1.4 million in general reserves, again, we're not impacting taxations if we did not go ahead with this project.
I will defer to Ms. Mercer because that's a funding, or Ms. Fuller, that's a funding question.
Ms. Fuller. You've got to.
Because it says that if we were to remove the project, that there would be the water reserves of 0.9 million and 1.4 million for general reserves. Again, this would not impact taxation.
Through the chair to Councillor Martman, that is correct. It would just free up funds in our reserves for other projects either in 2022 or in the future.
Right. And just to give my 2 cents, my gut, I'm going by my gut. I'm really uncomfortable with that section of road and the complexity to it. I really wish that we had looked at the 3rd Street because it's wide and I drive it. There's lots of rooms to ride a bike. I know we're looking at the future and that there's e-bikes and things like that will use these roads. But I think 3rd Street's not that far over and I'm uncomfortable with this section. Thank you.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. To Councillor Martman, we actually need to fix the S-curve though. So this work's going to get done anyway. It may be delayed, but we're still going to have to do that work. That's just an underground work. One of the questions I had is, with this, when the S-curve is done, we'll have a wider road, so it'll be much better for, I'm guessing, cars as well as bikes at that point. Is that a good statement?
Through your worship to Councillor Bonner. So in terms of the travel lanes, we'll size and essentially establish some travel lanes they meet the current standards, including any sort of horizontal expansion required for off-tracking of slightly larger vehicles that have to go around that. So it'll be a road constructed to the modern standard, which includes modern expectation for sidewalks on both sides, buffered bike lanes, so that includes the buffer to provide an all ages and abilities facility, and proper travel lanes. So it'll essentially be full completion, ultimate completion of that section of the road.
Okay. And if you can help me out with the bike lanes, I've gone down Fourth a couple of times, and there's sort of bike lanes on both sides. And I'm looking at your diagram, the S-curve will have bike lanes on both sides. So once we're at the top of the hill, one of the suggestions is go to just bike lanes on one side. So how do we get people back and forth between one bike lane and two bike lanes, unless the idea, like, is it one bike lane going down and no bike lane coming up?
So the idea is that there would be bike lanes on either side of the S-curve. Option B is continuation of that all the way down to Dunsmuir. So bike lanes on both sides. Option A, the downhill side on Albert Street down in towards Dunsmuir would be a shared facility. So it wouldn't have a dedicated cycling lane. It would be similar to what we have now on Bowen Road or Rutherford Road, where we have the stencils that show that it's a shared lane. Now, the reason we can do that is because the greatest value for cyclists having a separated lane occurs when the speed differential is the highest. So when the speed differential between a vehicle and a cycle is closer, cyclists aren't as stressed out when they're cycling there. So that's why we think we can propose a shared facility on the downhill side only. But the uphill side would still have a separate facility where that speed differential is higher. It obviously wouldn't be as good a facility for cyclists as a completely separated facility, but it's a trade-off with parking. So it's a trade-off between sort of values there that I think council needs to consider.
Having seen these icons on the road, of the shared road, they always tend to be half of them worn away by car traffic. So it's always it's quite an unusual share option. I guess I'm looking at money-wise here. We're looking at $800,000 to continue on the way we originally planned this. We just saved $500 on a bridge. So in theory, we're only looking at another $300,000 out of reserves. And I guess that would be a question for finance. Is that sort of okay?
It depends which reserve this is being funded from right now. We'd have to look at that. So potentially, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Before I go to Councillors Gesselbrock and Armstrong in order, I'm hoping Councillor Hemmons will weigh in this morning as the one person I know rides her bike a lot, as well as Councillor Gesselbrock, because what cyclists think of the proposals I think is important. I know staff is consulted, but I would value that opinion. So I'm giving her fair warning. Councillor Gesselbrock, and then Councillor Armstrong, and then Councillor Brown again. Councillor Gesselbrock, you're muted.
Oh, thank you, Worship. Yeah, my questions were regarding taxation, and it sounds like it's not this will not impact taxes. And then my question was about having a cycle track just on one side, and it sounds like that's not really feasible in terms of usage. Just to get things on the table and rolling, I'd like to move doing the full completion with the cycle lanes on both sides.
And there's a seconder with Councillor Bonner. Do you want to speak to it now?
Yeah, I think that, you know, we've spoken a lot about completing this minimum grid, and this is one of the major connectors from BIU to the downtown. I think if we want to build an amenity that will get used and you know, be there as the demand for cycling increases, which we're seeing with e-bikes and as our population densifies, I think if we're going to do it, we might as well do it right. And this is the option that does complete that. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. My question is for Ms. Mercer. We've heard that it won't impact taxation. However, could that $1.4 million be used to offset taxes increase this year?
through your worship, to Councillor Armstrong. No, that money wouldn't be used for that, to reduce taxes.
Thank you very much.
In order, Councillors Brown and Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship. Most projects seem to be escalating, so it's no surprise. Fully supportive. I would ask council if they're not supportive of doing the option B, the proper one, to not do it at all. As someone that cycles regularly, and with all due respect to Mr. Rosen, I wish the Sharrow was completely removed from a tool that we use at the city. We need to build proper infrastructure on major routes, and as Councillor Gesselbrock indicated, completing a minimum grid is a really crucial element, and I can think of no higher importance places between the connectivity between downtown, the hospital, and VIU. So and through Harewood there's really good bones and really good recent investments and through private and public dollars to really make a cycling grid work for a lot of folks. And when you look at sort of the Stats Canada geographical information, it is lower income compared to the rest of the city. So I think in terms of population centers, the type of populations that do cycle, or the type of populations that would really benefit from a strong, connected pedestrian or cycling network, this is the proper place to do it. So fully supportive of seeing this work done completely. I used to walk this, I think I walked this route like 5 days a week for 5 years. And that S-curve is, it is what it is, but it is a little daunting at times. So I think seeing this through is a good investment. It's the appropriate place, but if council is uncomfortable with proceeding with the full amount, I would really implore council just to not do it at all until it can be done correctly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Turley, and then Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Worship. I cannot support this motion. I always go the policy that if we're going to be doing underground infrastructure, then it should all be done at the same time, which means the first option is the one that I would support. However, the second one, Mr. Rosen indicated that there's no underground infrastructure being renewed on that stretch, which means at some point in time down the road, and I don't know for how long, it's all going to be dug up to redo the infrastructure underground. So that's the main reason why I will not support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I didn't intend to speak. I'm actually the wrong person to talk about this because I'll ride my bike anywhere. The S-curve is the trickiest part, and I think we can, I find in our active transportation planning, we often do the easy parts and then get to the hard part and say, we'll get there when we can afford it. I actually see staff is presenting us with doing the hard part first and then doing the easier parts a bit later on. I'm aware of the parking restrictions in that neighborhood and people having difficulty parking. So I'm actually in favor, I'm sorry, I forgot my computer, so I'm not sure which one I'm in favor of, but the bike lanes going down only the shared road is, I'm particularly keen on. I think we could probably save a little bit of money and get that section that we know is the trickiest section for cyclists fixed, and then tackle the rest of the section when budget isn't so tight.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Gee, maybe Councillor Hemmons would like to borrow my electronic device. Sure, you could operate it much more efficiently than I can mine. No, thank you, Your Worship, through you. I'm not going to support the motion that's on the floor. This is not a priority project for me, not just because I'm not a cyclist, but because I feel that we're looking at basically 1% of the population, and I think we've done a lot to accommodate that 1%, and I'm happy to continue to accommodate them through option 1. But not through the option that's on the table, which seriously impacts parking in that area. And I think that's something that can't be undervalued. So for me, it would either be option 1 or option 4, as Councillor Brown suggested, and that is to simply remove it for the time being. And I think Councillor Turley's reasoning is also good regarding infrastructure. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I won't be supporting either. I think the parking, having been working in a job where we had to deal with all the parking issues down there all the time because of the university, I'm not going to be supporting this option, but I'm in favor of the option that Councillor Hammond spoke of. Thank you.
Thank you. These are always troublesome issues for me. I mean, in an ideal world, lots more of us would be biking. We'd be healthier. It's good for the planet. It reduces traffic. Parking isn't an issue when you're parking bikes, except for the complaints and concerns raised quite legitimately by cyclists in this city, that when you get to the destination, there's no place to safely secure it, but that's a debate for another day. I think I heard Councillor Brown saying he's welcome to respond to me. I think he said, go big or go home. And that's really what Councillor Gesselbrock has said as well. And I'm mindful of what Councillor Turley's had to say and what Councillor Hemmons has had to say as one of the frequent cyclists in the city. I'd be inclined to go big or go home, and I'm not prepared to go big at this stage. As much as it appeals to my idealistic side, if you will, I'm not prepared in this budgetary year to make that kind of a commitment. Anything further from any members of council? Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to address the 1%. Our job here at this table, as I see it, is to plan for the future. And it might be 1% now, but I think in doing projects like this, we are planning for the future where car transportation we don't know what it's going to look like, but I imagine it's not going to look like 10 years from now what it is looking like right now. So it's our job to plan for that. So I don't buy the 1% argument. I think the first option that staff has recommended has given us, we're going forward, we're improving that section that is tricky for cyclists, but we're also acknowledging that parking in that area is difficult, and we're giving folks an option to get down, with that one bike lane on the side. So I'm comfortable with the middle ground here. And you said I'm a cyclist. I would use this infrastructure, but I think given our financial restraints, the recommended option is the right one.
So just so we're clear on the motion for the public who's watching, that is option 3 before us, correct?
Yeah, just a question.
Councillor Gesselbrock, please.
Thank you. Just in terms of, I'm hearing council speak of financial restraints, and I do understand that the cost of this project has gone up. Given just the technical nature of it, my understanding is that it's not going to increase taxation for this year. And I'm just curious, when we say financial restraints, are we speaking to its impact on other projects or the reserve? Because I'm just not understanding the financial restraints. So maybe Ms. Mercer could speak to that, what we're facing, what the impact of going ahead with this project at its full scale would have on our budget.
Ms. Mercer.
Thank you, Your Worship, to Councillor Gesselbrock. So basically what this would mean is you would have less money to fund other projects from reserves. So there, like you say, there is no tax impact, but there would be less funds to fund other projects. And that's really the financial issue related to this project.
Okay, great. So that's my understanding. And, given we've got a very large amount of other projects, and, this building this minimum grid is one, I would assume that this is a priority. So just, ask for reflection on the argument of financial restraints and to complete this, something that is needed.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. Just quickly, this particular project does complete a grid, all right? It completes the grid from the university downtown, and it will be used, and if it's a safe travel area, it'll be used by more and more people. And for every bike that goes downtown, there's one less parking spot you need for a car. And I would challenge anybody here to come up with a parkade downtown that costs this much money. So let's think about the future of where we're going to be in the next 10 years, of which point this grid will be used on a regular basis. And I think it's not so much go big or go home sort of thing. This actually is the minimum that you would build for bike safety to get from the university downtown. So it's not big. It's the basic minimum for safety. Thank you.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I ask Mr. Rosen, for the extra $400,000, the completion, can you tell me exactly what we're getting? Is it the shared lane along Albert Street going down to Dunsmuir?
Through your worship to Councillor Hammond. So the extra $400,000 allows us to continue and complete the project all the way from Milton down to Dunsmuir. So it's the cost of option A or option B is pretty similar. So it's really a question of that extra $400,000 allows us to continue the project all the way down to Dunsmuir and complete it right down into the downtown.
But the completed project is a shared lane, correct? It's not a...
It's whichever council decides. Okay. It's either option A or it's option B.
I see. Thank you.
Anything further? The motion is in front of us. All those in favor? Councillors Brown, Bonner, and Gesselbrock, and those opposed? Councillors Martman, Hemmons, Krogh, Thorpe, and Turley, and Armstrong. The motion is defeated.
Your Worship, if council would like to make one of the other option motions right now, it would be acceptable.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I'll move staff's recommendation.
Seconded.
Thank you. I was going to say Councillor Gesselbrock. I'm not sure whether Councillor Turley beat you to it or not, but I'll give it to you on the seconding. Councillor Hemmons, do you want to speak to it? No. Councillor Gesselbrock, do you want to speak to it?
Thank you. Although this is my second choice, the pinch point on this is the S-curve, and that's going to be the expensive part, and that's the part that we definitely need the city to step in and get done. So I support this option, and I think that further upgrade to the full cycle route can be completed if we have to down the road, and this S-curve won't be a barrier for future councils in that decision. And I know I would definitely welcome having a bit safer passage through that Albert space as most cyclists. So this is the right step forward. Although it's not going all the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick question, and this may be a hard question to answer, but when this is done, and 3 years from now, we decide that we want bike lanes on the other side as well, do you have a rough idea how much it would cost to add them up to this point here? I'm going to guess it's more than what we're talking about today.
Through your worship to Councillor Bonner. So I understand the option that's on the table is taking the project up to, I believe it's Milton Street. So that's cycle lanes on both sides of the road. So it's essentially the ultimate complete cross-section all the way to Milton. In the future, council can decide to carry on all the way down to Dunsmuir as we've proposed now for probably a similar cost. So it may not cost substantially more in the future by just stopping at Milton now. It's actually a pretty sensible place to break the project and then carry on in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to be clear on which option we're talking about. Is it option 2 or is it option 1 that I see on our screen in front of us?
It's the option on your screen right now.
Option 1.
Option 1.
Thank you.
I think part of the confusion this morning has been around A and B from staff versus the 4 options outlined in the actual material. Okay.
Thank you.
You didn't wish to say anything?
Yes, while my microphone's on, I will. I'm prepared to support this as what I see a compromise position, being hopefully reasonable. in most decisions. It's not my first choice. My first choice would be to leave this project for another day. However, I am prepared to support this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree. This is not the best option, but I think it's the right option. And I want to remind everyone, perhaps those who are listening, Albert is still a bike route. So just because we don't put in the infrastructure doesn't mean people still can't ride their bikes on it. And in fact, I think Albert, the reason it's been chosen for a route is for exactly the reasons Mr. Rosen pointed out. It has lower traffic and an easier grade. So this is a section of road that people can travel on their bikes, and then they will connect into infrastructure when it gets to that really tricky S-curve.
I'm not seeing any further speakers. The motion's in front of us. All those in favor? And do we have any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate the debate on that, Council. Ms. Mercer.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I can get my clicker working. Oh, here we go. So our next slide is for relating to sanitation. So I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Sims. We received some information this morning that impacts this slide. So I'll pass it over to Mr. Sims for comment.
Mr. Sims, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as Ms. Mercer hinted, we've got some rather late-breaking news that our costs for accommodating the change in reception facility for Recycle BC are a little higher than we anticipated. So that it may impact the current draft user rates that you see on your screen up above. And so I think we'd be well advised to just delay any discussion on this until we have some certainty around those current draft user rates, and before we step into the next step of looking at the life cycle of the vehicles. Ironically, this week as well, one of the diesel units blew up again. So we've got a massive bill in front of us if we were, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to. So we're getting ourselves wedged into a bind, but at the same time, I don't want to rush ahead without complete information.
Fair to say it's been a bad news week for British Columbia everywhere. Thank you, Mr. Sims. Unless I hear something to the contrary, we will discuss that at a future date when the appropriate or more information is available to us. Ms. Mercer?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the draft financial plan includes the budgeting of our RCMP contract at 95% of our 90% portion of the total cost for all years in the plan. And that's due to a history of vacancies, and we will try to minimize annual operating surpluses. So, so council could choose to lower this percentage to 94% for 2022 and then bring it back up to 95% for 23 and onwards. So a cost analysis was done for the last few years, and a 94% budget rate should be sufficient, assuming everything stays at the levels it is currently. However, if staffing and other related costs increase, the 94% may not be sufficient to cover all of the costs. So we do have an RCMP contract reserve that is intended to fund any shortfall that surplus doesn't cover. So we have surplus to cover. If we don't have any surplus, we have a reserve. And currently the balance is projected at the end of 2022 to be just over $1.4 million. And but this reserve does have a minimum balance. So if we did use it and it dropped below its minimum balance, we would have to build in a repayment plan into the budget. And a 1% drop would result in about a $315,000 savings in the budget, or a 0.27% tax reduction. So before making this decision, I would just like to stress that if we dropped it in 2022, there's a decrease, but in 2023, there's an increase because we need to pick up that funding shortfall. So we're currently looking at 3.6%. So this says this is a one-time reduction in 2022. You'd be looking at increasing 2023 by approximately 0.26. So that's just a warning on that. And also this decision could be delayed until final, when we would have all of the final information for the RCMP and any other estimates that improve at that point. And you would have a better idea of what some of the final numbers are going to be.
Thank you, Ms. Mercer. Mr. Rudolph.
Your Worship, I think this is one of those items that's common in municipalities. I've seen this dealt with before in terms of the reality of what's on the books and how much is actually being expended. So it's not an unusual option to be provided to council. I think it's a year-to-year assessment, so I don't believe it's necessarily an automatic, it's going to be an increase in taxes next year. I think this would have to be looked at. My understanding is 95% is perceived as the optimal, but it may not be there again next year. We'd have to see, I would suggest that council revisit this and see if there's in fact a requirement to get it there. But we are projecting that the appropriate funding is 95%, but there's a window of opportunity this year maybe to go a little lower. So it does generate some opportunity there. I've been involved in conversations with both the superintendent and the finance department. There's differences of opinion about budgeting and that types of things. So you may want to make sure that you're hearing from the superintendent on this as well, and Ms. Mercer, in terms of where we actually think we are in terms of the budget situation this year. But I think the finance department is comfortable bringing this forward as an option for you this year, and it does help alleviate some of the tax burden. Inevitably, we'll have to revisit this, and it could defer some of that into next year. And I just wanted to make sure that, I think both need to speak to where we are with the fiscal side of it this year, and then of course hear what the superintendent has to say as well. Thank you.
So to put it in real simple terms, instead of spending 95 cents, we're going to spend 94 cents. And we're fairly comfortable that that's in fact what we're really going to actually spend, as opposed to picking the 95. We really only need 94 in practical terms. I see the superintendent this morning. Good morning, Superintendent, nodding. I wonder if you want to comment on this morning. And Councillor Armstrong has a question. I appreciate that. Perhaps we'll hear from the superintendent first.
Your Worship. Good morning. I have spoken with Ms. Mercer on this, and as Your Worship indicated, it truly does come down to the difference between a small percentage of the overall budget that we historically have not used and has been returned to the city. Policing is always difficult to predict, but I think we can rely on the fact that historically we have been under budget, and so it works for the city, if that makes sense, Your Worship.
Thank you. And Councillor Armstrong, please.
Yes, my question would be to Superintendent Fletcher. Traditionally, we haven't had the number of homicides that we've had this year. Would the homicide investigations eat into the budget more than it would have been, or would the budget be more impacted this year? Because I think there's been, 5 homicides this year versus 0 the previous year?
That is correct. We have had 5 homicides this year, which is an anomaly. In terms of our current budget, we're tracking well, but the investigation is always challenging if other things come up. It's my understanding in speaking with Ms. Mercer that there are reserves as well. Am I correct on that? Yeah.
And a final question. Has your service levels been impacted by the 10% deployment to different provincial and federal needs across the province?
Yes. As indicated by the contract, 10% of the detachment is funded by provincial, and those resources can be allocated in the event of emergency under Section 9, and that has been enacted for both Houston and Fairy Creek.
And with that, have you had to supplement those bodies by the use of overtime on your watches or other units?
Yes, we have had to use overtime. As previously stated, the challenges that we're facing, Your Worship, is the work level for the members is becoming excessively high, and they are unable to take the overtime calls. So it has been a challenge in terms of having people respond. We do try and use, we don't look just to Nanaimo resources when we call for overtime. We have had circumstances where we have had no one able to respond for additional overtime, and that is district-wide. So it's not just Nanaimo detachments, it's other detachments as well.
Yes, I understand some detachments didn't even have any police officers working. However, I think that's a discussion for another time that we need to discuss for the needs with the province and the feds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a general comment. I would prefer to see us wait on this decision. I appreciate that we're looking at reducing the taxes, and as Councillor Brown would say, we're chasing a percentage here. And given that we're already, I believe, sitting at 3.6 for 2023, we would just be pushing that on to next year. And I personally, I feel that if we do that over and over and over again, we're just going to keep getting in this situation. So I appreciate that this has been presented as an option, and I would like to consider it later after we've made the rest of our decisions. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think we should just leave it. From financial budgets to carbon budgets, it's been constantly pushed out into the future, and it's a burden that future citizens and generations will ultimately have to carry. So I think it's irresponsible to reduce it to get a percentage this year when you just simply have to increase it next year. So I think leave it as is the only responsible item to do, even though it might not get us a lower percentage. Thanks.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with the comments of Councillors Hemmons and Brown on this. I'm not comfortable with pushing a possible increase onto next year just to give us a small amount of extra relief this year. But I do agree with the comment from Councillor Hemmons that we'd be best served, I think, to reserve our decision on this until other factors are more firmly established. Thanks.
I will go with what I think is the flow this morning and put off this decision. But I must say what I think I've heard this morning is that we're just trying to say what's the real number. We're not decreasing policing in the community as a result of this. And I'm seeing Superintendent Fletcher nod. I won't say supportively, but in agreement with what I've just stated. So I'm happy to put it down the road. We'll make no motion on it this morning unless someone cares to make a motion. But I don't think it's to be interpreted the way that some on council have interpreted it. We're not reducing policing services. But if there's no further speakers, thank you, Superintendent, for your comments on this. Ms. Mercer.
If I could get it to go to the next slide, it would be. Oh, there we go. So this is our last decision slide, and it relates to the Special Initiatives Reserve. So we've used $3.4 million in funding from the Special Initiatives Reserve between 2022 and 2025 to lower property taxes. So Council could direct staff to reduce that if you wanted to reserve some of that funding for other projects or future use. That would have an impact on increasing the tax rate increase. So, but it is an option if Council chose to do that.
So we're being asked to consider the possibility that we up the taxes, therefore use less of the money we've set aside.
Yeah, it is an option. We just wanted to, because we use that in the budget to reduce it down. We were at the time trying to keep it below 3.6%, as that was kind of the mandate we had. However, given the information we received after that, it didn't work out that way, but it is an option because we did choose to do that. So we wanted to give council the option to confirm or make changes to that.
Thanks very much, Ms. Mercer. In order, Councillors Turley, Martman, and Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. That's you to Ms. Mercer. Is there a minimum balance on this reserve?
No, because this funds came from the 2020 surplus. And so that went into the Special Initiatives Reserve, which can be used for anything, and there is no minimum balance.
So, further question, if I may. So if we used, we've included 3.4 million of it to get to the, okay, so what will be remaining in that reserve once that's drawn?
We've used the funding over the 4 years. So at the end of the 4th year, there'd be about $1,000 left in that reserve. Now, having said that, there are other things have been funded from that reserve. And if projects that were funded from that came in under budget, the money would go back into that reserve. So in all likelihood, it probably will be a bit more than $1,000. But at this point, all of the funding except for $1,000 has been committed.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. This is interesting. However, I was hoping we might go through the process of starting at the beginning in the PowerPoint presentation and go through what we might be wanting to have, like must-haves, and then come back to this, right? Just as a little exercise, I added up all our percentages of what is being asked in the business cases. And if my math is right, is totaling about 1.71%. And is that incorrect?
Okay, you go ahead and answer.
Ms. Fuller.
Through the chair to Councillor Martin. Sorry, Ms. Mercer was just confirming me if that was the correct number. I don't have that one handy. I was just shaking my head at her, not you. Sorry.
I didn't quite hear that.
I didn't either.
Ultimately, if you went and made all the decision, like all of them, I think it came to just over 6% if you added everything. And so I'm not quite sure what that adds up to. About 1.7, I guess, was what you said, yeah.
Yeah, I took each ask and I added them up and it came to an additional 1.71 on top of the 4.1, et cetera.
Which would be about right, yes.
And as much as I care about the dollars, I really care about our city. And when I look at these requests in the business cases, I don't see our staff ever coming to us with something that's frivolous. I think when we need security for IT, that's protecting our city. When we need increases in the policing or in the management or in HR and financial services, I look at this as being a healthy city with healthy employees that maybe don't have to work overtime or have the room and the comfortable. When you have a healthy workplace, you open the door for innovation and you open the door for people being positive, your production increases, it's just positive all the way around. And so when I look at this budget and everything that's needed, I'm actually leaning towards biting the bullet and giving our city what it needs in order to be the best that we can be. And I felt really good when I saw how much landfill taxes might be. So there we go. There's my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Martman. Councillor Bonner and then Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to staff. The funding for this Special Initiative Reserve, can you remind me again how money gets into that reserve?
So it's an allocation from surplus. So the majority of this money came from the 2020 surplus, which really resulted from the COVID-19 restart grant plus some other. And that's where the bulk of that money has come from. So it's basically surplus from last year.
And so there's also another fund that gets funded through casino revenues and Fortis, which is sort of a similar fund in that we can use it for just about anything as well.
So the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve, which is really meant to fund council initiatives, and it has been impacted by the pandemic because casinos were closed and a portion of our casino revenues go in there. Now that casino is coming back, there's more money going into that reserve. But at this point, I might be able to give you the balance in there, but there's a, that can be used to fund projects and whatnot, so.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks. I would just.
Oh, Councillor Armstrong? Councillor Brown's deferring to you.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Brown. I'm just saying, I don't want to reduce the reserves for this purpose. I think we should look at that, or the next council should look at it next year. I think the impact of COVID is still yet to be fully seen. We're seeing a lot of businesses going under this year, which is going to impact our revenues coming in. So I'm quite content this year to leave it as is. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Worship. I suspect I'll be a minority, but I fully support not using reserves to lower taxes. Just putting that out there.
Yeah.
Councillor Brown, you may be in a minority, but it always appeals to me to leave money in the bank. You never know how rainy the day. Oh God, that's a terrible expression. I apologize for that. But given no, I'm being serious when I say that, given the seriousness of what's happened in British Columbia. But the expression saving for a rainy day has never had more meaning, I think, than what we've seen in the last week.
Okay.
So, Your Worship, I'm not seeing any motions for this slide or any changes to the direction that's been taken. I'm not sure if you wanted to have your morning break before Ms. Mercer moves on, or we'll see where she's at.
That might not be a bad idea.
Yes, so Your Worship, can Ms. Mercer explain what the next step is so that it's clear, because I don't think we've done that.
Sure. Ms. Mercer.
Thank you. So the next step is we would go back to 1A, and we'll work our way through the slides that haven't had a decision made on them. And then what we'll do is at the end, we'll take a bit of a break and we'll give you a recap of all of your decisions. That'll give you a rough estimate of what the tax increase should be. Now I say rough because until we put it into the system, we won't know for certain, but it should be fairly close. And so at the end, we'll give you a summary slide of all of the decisions that have been made and where you stand.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll break for 15. Oh, Councillor Turley, sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted a point of clarification on the Special Initiatives Reserve. So to get to the, whatever we're at right now, 4.1, it involves using 3.4 million. So that's already a decision that we've made to keep the taxes at 4.
That is baked into the draft plan, yes.
Thank you.
So unless someone makes a motion, that's what will happen. So Councillors Brown and I I think are in the minority on this issue. And it's never good to die in a hill you don't have to. All right, we'll break for 15. Thank you very much. Hi, Leonard Krogh here. I'm here with Karen Lindsay today. She's going to show me how to sign up for our app.
Voyant Alert, the City of Nanaimo's emergency notification system. So we'll start by going into the App Store, Mayor Krogh.
Done.
Next, you're going to hit search. And you're going to search for the app, which is Voyant Alert. So it's VOYENT. Now you see, it's already selected it. Click there. Hit get, and then we're going to install.
And why are we downloading this app?
We're downloading that so that you can get this onto your phone system, and what it will do is it will send you a push notification out. So if the City of Nanaimo issues an emergency alert, it will actually push the notification out onto your phone. The really nice part of this app is that it's anonymous, so it goes by postal code. So we're not requesting you to put your name or personal information in. It just works off of the app through your phone system. There are also, if you have family members or friends that maybe don't have a smartphone or would like another way, you can also sign up online or call our Public Works Department, and they have phone and texting options available as well. So there's lots of options for people depending on what their needs are.
Fabulous. So you can rest with some comfort knowing you can find out what's necessary and know that people who are important to you are notified.
Absolutely. So now you have Voyant Alert on your phone. And now just select open. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to tap in the postal code that it's prompting you.
All right. So
you just click on there and start entering. And then find on a map. So here you'll see the welcome page for the city of Nanaimo, and you want to subscribe to notifications, yes?
Yes.
Click that you agree to the terms, so click both to the yes for consent, and then hit next. And it's going to ask to either allow or not allow notifications, and you want to always allow.
Always allow.
Always allow. And the reason that is, if you don't allow, it won't push the notification out to you. So always allow.
Always allow.
And now you see here, you've got a message to accept that you've signed out. That's the two-factor authentication, and you're going to tap yes. And now you're in the system. Also, when you have a moment, we recommend that you pick your locations and sign up based on those locations, and then you'll get alerts from the city of Nanaimo.
Karen, thank you. Everyone, sign up.
Hey, Tiana. Hey. It sure is the coldest rink in town.
Whoa! Yeah, buddy! Nice save, James!
Wow, your goalie is keeping you guys in the game. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, man, that's hot.
Sorry, that's the way I like it. Oh. Go, 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 go. Penalty shot! Scalds from hot drinks are a leading cause of hospitalization for children under 5.
2 minutes, down in the front. prevent unsportsmanlike conduct.
Hot tea and coffee will cause serious burns to a child in less than a second.
Got it, kid? Use the lid.
This is the 2018 redux of the lighting at Nanaimo's historic bastion. I've had the pleasure of being part of the relighting project on this amazing building in downtown Nanaimo. So what we did is we've replaced the original high-pressure sodium lights, which basically did an okay job of lighting up the bottom 10 feet of the building, and replaced them with modern LED lighting that has the capacity to change color. We can run through a number of different colors that we have pre-programmed here in a pink, a purple, a green. Probably my favorite on here is Rainbow Chase for Pride Week. It'll actually run all the way around the building all the time.
With this new technology, organizations can now request that the bastion be lit to promote their cause by going to the City of Nanaimo website and following the instructions. Go to Your Government, Bastion Lighting Requests, complete the lighting request form, and submit. You will hear from us within a couple days if your request has been approved, and the bastion will be lit in the colors that you have requested. If you have any questions, please contact the Mayor's office at 250-755-4400.
So the next time you're in downtown Nanaimo at night, come on and check out the new dynamic lighting at the Bastion.
This is a plug catch basin. We have 10,000 plus of these in the city of Nanaimo with over 600 kilometers of road. Maintenance staff can't be everywhere at once. So we don't ask a lot for the city of Nanaimo residents, but if they know that they have one of these catch basins, clear it off with a shovel or a rake. Do not use your hands. If this gets plugged, you could ultimately flood a neighbor around the corner, flood a road, which is prone to hydroplaning. And if you're lucky enough that you have a green bin, by all means, throw the compost into the green bin. And if you don't, throw it into a composting pile. It's just gonna make a lot of the roads much more clear once we have the debris lifted off. During a snow event, the catch basin can be plugged with snow. The resident knows the proximity of the catch basin, by all means, grab a shovel or a rake, don't use your hands, and clear it off again. This is ultimately gonna save you from flooding, the road, or your neighbor. You know, as much as we want help cleaning the plug catch basins off, please do not assist us by trying to unplug a culvert. Call the city yard. They have 24/7 service. It's 250-758-5222. And also there is sandbags and sand available. Just bring a shovel.
We're here at Bruce and Dundas. Somebody's stolen the street names that were here, so we're here to replace them. Our sign shop has just generated us 2 signs, so I'm going to go through the process of putting it together and reinstalling the street names. First thing, we got to center the signs. We do everything on this truck. We've got all the equipment on here to build, install, remove, repair, whether it's street signs, street names, posts, banners, Christmas decorations and so forth. I'm going to basically just put the sign in the brackets, and we'll be doing both signs, of course. So I've got a cross bracket that I'm going to put in. And then add the top sign, which is this street we're on, Dundas. So already do the same there. We put the street that we're coming up to on the bottom, so they all basically have the same. The cross street will be on the top. We got to put some bolts in to secure them so nobody will steal the street name. We're ready to go. I'll just put this back and we'll go out and install this where the missing one is. Every year we do what we call a stop sign survey, where we go around and check all the stops. We clean them, make sure they're in the right spots, in good condition, not bent, and we also clean the street names, make sure they're good. As we're doing that, if there's ones that we decide we want to replace, we do that at that time. This year we're looking at approximately about 120 sets. It's very expensive to do, but we're continually, weekly changing street names because of either them getting damaged or people breaking them and taking them. So I'll put this on, and then I put a bolt through to secure it to the post. There we go. And that's good, we're done. Dundas and Bruce Ave are now ready to go.
Ms. Mercer? We're ready if you are, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have started back at 1A. So we'll go through all of the business cases that didn't have a decision. And we'll start with 1A, which is the Manager of Financial Services and Special Projects. And this position has a April 1st implementation date, funded from general revenue with an approximate 0.11% tax increase for 2022.
What's that? We're going to do that again.
So any discussion on 1A?
Your worship, I was expecting to see the master list of what we have. Do you want to see that first and then come back to each point, or do you want to do this individually? Because this is, I think we wanted to see the piece before you come back to this.
Yeah.
So we do have that slide available, which is...
Let's see the big list.
Yeah.
List that Councillor Martin worked on intuitively and added up carefully.
Give us 1 second. We can put it on the drive so it can be pulled up.
And while we're waiting, Councillor Bonner, your question?
Wasn't a question, I was just going to move the motion.
And your worship, just to say, these are all important, but they're not necessarily in any order of priority. So just to make sure you're, just because something happens to be the last item you get to doesn't mean it's less important than the other one. So, and vice versa. So just be aware of that.
Well, I did. No, I said I was going to, but
we're
we're just waiting for master list.
We're not panicked here this time. Just waiting for the list slide.
Probably a good time.
We're having some technical difficulties, so just 1 second.
We just need Ms. Fulla to be able to do her part, and then we can get it transferred over here and then up on the screen.
Just need a big whiteboard.
Well, at least we're not relying on Gestetners. I remember helping my sainted mother when she went back to teaching. In the back room of a one-room school. Yes, Councillor Turley, it was uphill to school and both ways. Yes.
Your worship, while we're waiting, I anticipated you were aware of what the slide said, and we have that. So then it was just sort of the list. And then you could talk about each, you could see the picture, and we will go through the list one at a time. So that was anticipated to be at the end, but I was anticipating this was the end, and that you could do that. So we could necessarily have to produce all those slides for you, but we could.
Councillor Martman, did you want to ask a question while we're waiting?
Well, I don't think I quite heard about
What we're waiting for is the slide that has the list of what we've gone through before.
business cases are in our manuals.
Right.
Your worship, so yeah, you could go one on, but if you wanted to see the complete list, and then you could work your way through the list, and then there was beside that will be the percent increase. So it's a simpler list to follow, and
it'll be on one sheet. We don't have to flip back and forth.
Oh, I see.
yeah, and then we could just walk through the items individually.
My apologies. Wendy and I talked about it after we'd gone through the second round, so I apologize for that. We're almost there. Maybe make that a little bit bigger.
I was going to say, if we could size that up a little, that would be.
So maybe Ms. Mercer can explain what this is, and Ms. Fulla, and then you could walk through, then the list, the decision points which were deferred, which were the ones that would increase the taxation rate is just below the screen there, so.
So what the slide does is it shows where we started on November 10th. So we started with a 4.3% tax increase. And then at your, the decisions that were made on December 10th shows the 4 of them and the 2 that impacted taxes. So we brought down the tax rate by 0.17%. So that revised the property tax increase at November 19th to 4.1. So now everything below that 4.1 line now is a decision that could impact the tax rate. And as we go through them, we will adjust it. Ms. Fulla will work on her slide, and then we will give you a revised version at the end. So we will start with 1A, and that's the manager. Oh, sorry. Yep.
Just have a, yes, thanks.
Yep.
Just have a look.
Okay. So the first item for decision is the manager of financial services and special projects. And the decision basically is to add it or not. And if you did, it's approximately a 0.11% increase.
Councillor Turley and then Councillor Marmon.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Ms. Mercer. So just so I can understand what the duties are, is this to kind of replace or partially replace what Ms. Legan was hired for, or is that something totally different?
No. So through your worship to Councillor Turley, so this position would report underneath my position as director, and it would supervise 3 of the departments, so payroll, purchasing and stores, as well as revenue services, because those take up, they require more support, and as well as any special projects that come up, they will have the capacity to take those on, where most managers and myself are kind of working at a capacity. So that's to relieve some of that, be able to, move forward proactively rather than reactively. So it doesn't have anything to do with the general manager position.
Thank you.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Actually, I would like to move the recommended motion.
Sorry, the plan I think is to go through the list, just get a look at what this is, and then we will go through the items one by one.
Okay.
I know you're anxious this morning, Councillor Martin.
You have the option of either, I mean, the point was that you had the list and you could see the numbers attached to each of these issues. And so as you sequentially make decisions on there, so Councillor Martman's right and you're right. So you could, what other process you choose? Do you want to go through the list again, or are you prepared now to walk through each one individually? That's your call.
Unless I hear it strongly from council, I'd like to go through this summary so that we know what the potential is, and then we can go back and we will start to go through these individually again. Okay. Again, if we can make it a tiny bit bigger.
So, just for clarification.
Yes.
So I understand the process. You're saying that we're going to go through each of these positions and understand why they're there and then go back and vote?
No, I want you to see the list, see what the total is. You've calculated already roughly what it is, and that's what we're dealing with. But I want council to see the list of what is on our decision, what are our decision points today. Then we'll go back and go through the items set out in the material. But let's just have if we can expand it slightly so everyone can see what we're looking at, and then the total at the bottom.
So Your Worship, the list, ideally this list was designed to have all of the options, and then we would just delete the ones that weren't. It works well, except when you have a slide that has more than one option. So say one of the options has, like the RCMP staffing one has 3 options basically, and all 3 of those impacts are there, so that your total at the bottom is not going to be reflected. Is that correct? So I think Councillor Martman's add of your 1.7 is accurate. Where you see here is 2.4 because there's a couple of slides that have more than one option. So ideally, we wanted to clean this up and then present it to you, but
what you're saying is the range of estimated property tax increases is between 1.7 and 2.24, roughly.
It'll be under 2.2 because there is a couple of the slides have more than one option. So if it's a 0.22, option 1.44, yeah. So it'll be less than 2.4. If you added all of the best case, like first options, you'd get around 1.7% increase. So you'd be looking at around 6%, 6.1% if you added all of them.
Because this is in addition to the 4.1 that we're starting with.
Yeah, we're starting with what, 4.1, yeah.
Thank you. Good. All right, if council's happy with having seen this, should we march down the yellow brick road? Yes.
Okay. Can you scroll back up to the top, please?
Yeah, oh, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll start with 1A, and we'll go through them one by one. So there's two options for 1A is to add the manager of financial services and special projects, and that's a 0.11% increase, or just keep the status quo, not include it, and there is no tax impact to that decision.
So, Your Worship, it would be in order for Councillor Martman to make a motion now if she so chooses.
And keeping in mind, this is the Finance and Audit Committee's recommendations, and we will still be voting on this as a final package, everyone. So I'm going to defer to Councillor Martman, and then I'll go to Councillor Thorpe.
Oh, sorry, Your Worship. Has it been moved and seconded?
No, she wants to now.
I would like to move the recommended motion.
Perhaps we could bring it up on the screen for everyone, please.
And then if I may speak to it.
And seconded? Councillor Hemmons, thank you. Councillor Martman.
Okay, thank you. So I'll actually just read from the business case about, with all the financial managers working at all or near capacity, it limits the director from delegating additional work, resulting in an unsustainable workload. So what does that unbalanced workload mean? It's a reduction in ability of staff to provide higher service levels, reduction of strategic planning by the director, slower response time, completion of current ongoing projects, and reduction in identifying opportunities for proactive policy improvements. And this is where I say this may cost us a little bit of money, but investing in our city and our employees and our operations may end up seeing us save money, actually, have a healthier work environment, and be innovative for our city. So I definitely support it.
Thank you. And Councillor Thorpe.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just first of all, yes, I will support this. Like Councillor Martman, I've done my math on these proposed changes, and I've decided which ones I will support, and I will be supporting most of them. And I agree with the earlier comments of Councillor Martman that these are not put in front of us lightly by staff. In the most case, I think there is a solid argument for these positions. In some cases, there's more than one option, and that will impact the taxation level. But I think they are all worthy of close examination. So this is one that I'll definitely support to start with. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands or discussion on this one. The motion's in front of us. It's on the screen. All those in favor? Any contrary? I don't see any. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Ms. Mercer.
So the next item is the Supervisor of Technical Support. So this provides the IT Technical and Client Services section with additional capacity and oversight to support the city's increasing technology requirements. So that's an April 1st start. General revenue is the funding source, and for 2022, that is an approximate 0.09% increase. And if there are any questions, Mr. Mackay is here.
Councillor Martman? Sorry. Oh, all right. And a seconder? I'll second. Mr. Mackay, did you want to say anything? Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Just make myself available for questions. I've been through it.
Speaking to the motion.
Perhaps you could.
Speaking to the motion, I think this is a no-brainer. It's called cybersecurity, and after what we saw back east, I think everything we can do to protect our citizens and ourselves, this is a no-brainer.
Thank you, Councillor Martman. It's been seconded. I'm not seeing any hands, any discussion. All those in favor? Any contrary? Councillor Brown is opposed. Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Mackay. Ms. Mercer?
So the next few slides relate to the police services. So this is their support staffing resources plan. So they've identified 3 scenarios, one being their ideal scenario, which is 15 positions over 5 years. 2022 has an April 1st start date for the positions for 2022. For 2022, we're expecting an approximate 0.44% increase if this option is taken, and then the other increases in the following years. Option 2 is their moderate scenario, which is 11 positions over 4 years. Again, 2022 positions have an April 1st implementation date, and the expected increase for 2022 is approximately 0.32%. And again, with the other years following increases there. Option 3 was identified as their minimal scenario, and that's 8 positions over 4 years. And the 2022 positions have an April 1st start again, and the impact to 2022 is approximately 0.26%. And option 4 is status quo for 2022, so not adding any of these positions. So that is the option. That are the options available in the for this business case. Superintendent Fletcher is here to comment on any of these positions, and there is a outline of all of the positions in your business cases.
Your Worship, if I may comment, the other option attached to this, which is not listed, is you could do this at a year-to-year basis. So this is you're being asked to make a multi-year commitment, and the other option is to deal with it year-to-year, which is the one I would recommend, only from a budgetary point of view, not to dismiss this but the future council may choose to have the option of, there may be challenges with budget. So I'm just suggesting that this is the only one of these that's a multi-year commitment with growth, and that would be sort of in conjunction with the multi-year commitment for the officers that you're in the middle of deploying. So not to dismiss the importance of this, but you have the option of saying, yeah, this is good for 5 years, this is what we will commit to, and that will be built into the budget for next year and subsequent years. Or you have the option of saying, no, this is a year-to-year scenario, knowing full well that this has been the recommendation to go forward with a multi-year plan, which is a good idea, by the way.
In order, Councillors Brown, Thorpe, Turley, and Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to move option 1 if there's a seconder.
And seconded, Councillor Hemmons. Do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I definitely hear what Mr. Rudolph is saying, but I think when it's very apparent when there's chronically underfunded departments and resources that to do proper planning for the future of departments and the organization, sometimes you do have to step up and make that multi-year commitment. And with respect to this, I appreciate the work that was done on it, and that's something I'm fully prepared to do to hopefully provide that stability and continuity if it passes to do the appropriate planning that you have with the assurance that these are in the budget and they are committed to. So ultimately, any future council can reverse that, even though they're in the financial plan. But I think it's the important thing to do, and the responsible thing to do is to make that commitment on the long term.
Thank you. Superintendent Fletcher, did you want to say something before I carry on with the other members of council, or?
No, Your Worship, other than I agree with Councillor Brown.
I thought you might.
You asked.
Yes, I know. In order, Councillors Thorpe, Turley, and Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Brown's taken me by surprise here, but I agree with his comments. I'm just going to have to change my math. I was prepared to move option number 2 as a middle of the road option, but I will certainly support option number 1 because I think council hears over and over again from the public that public safety is their first and primary concern. And as our city grows, I think we have to grow our police force with it to provide that safety and security for our citizens. So I'm certainly prepared to support option 1, and maybe I'll look at my math when it comes to some of the other topics to make up for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Turley, and then Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure who can answer. I've actually got 3 questions. The first one is, where are we with regard to the previous determination that we had 15 members over 5 years, I think at the beginning of our mandate? And so are we in year 3 now? Is that 3 fingers or 4? 3, okay. So this is in addition to the 3 members that are coming on board this coming year and the following year?
Excuse me, Your Worship, to Councillor Turley. This is police services. These are the municipal employees that support police services.
Thank you. Okay. So my second question probably is appropriate then. Do we have space for them?
Mm-hmm. We are working on that.
And yeah, the other one won't apply. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turley. Councillor Armstrong, please.
Well, thank you. I'll definitely be supporting this because when you look across the province, this still doesn't even bring us anywhere near close to what comparable detachments or municipal police forces have per capita. So definitely in support of this. I think actually the number's too low, but it is what it is. Thank you.
I normally would have been in Councillor Thorpe's position and gone for a moderate position on this simply because I'm conscious of where we're going with the budget increases this year. Having said that, it saddens me that we have to consider this kind of increase because all in all, some of it relates to the ongoing mental health addictions, brain injury and homelessness crisis that plagues our communities and takes up so much police time doing work that would be unnecessary if proper facilities and supportive housing and complex care units were available. But we are where we are, and the reality is significant numbers of first responders in this community, let alone the RCMP, are off on stress leave, are getting tired and run down, and I think it is the appropriate motion to go with the ideal, what is referred to as the ideal scenario, although I would cheekily question the use of that term, but certainly I will support the motion. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. So now that my senior's memory has come back, these positions, will they in any way offload some of the duties of the members so that they can do what they're designed to do?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any further hands or discussion. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Superintendent.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're on to...
Ms. Mercer.
So we made some decisions from last week, so we'll skip to 1G, which is the RCMP additional bike patrol units. Now, this one we mentioned last week that perhaps we might want to wait on this one until the downtown security review is done, but it is up to council. If you chose to add these positions, it would be an April 1st implementation date, and the approximate tax increase is 0.44% for 2022. And Superintendent Fletcher is here to speak to that if you had any questions.
Thank you. Before the superintendent speaks, we do have a study review underway now, Mr. Rudolph, Mr. Nielsen, and the former chief of the Abbotsford Police, which may have an impact on this. And I'm just going to state at the outset, my thinking is that if approved, we don't necessarily have to spend anyway. There's no requirement that it's in the budget that we spend the money. But because the recommendations that are made may well have an impact on where we think the money is best balanced in terms of supporting our downtown, because the bike patrol units are certainly aimed at our downtown, whether or not we're spending more money on security or some other steps that might lessen the need, although I don't think we'd ever have run out of need for the bike patrol, which has been so effective over the years. So I throw that out there as the first comment. Councillor Martman, you're first on the list on this one.
Thank you, and through your worship. So I'm wondering, maybe if we put, this is the one I struggled with the most, although it'd be nice to have. I'm also hopeful that with the housing coming aboard, Nickel Street and Prideaux Street and the more work we do in our city, that hopefully maybe this is not actually required. It's not looking at being implemented to April 1st. So I'm wondering if I heard mention about we don't have to make a decision today, but we could always add this on at a later date if we felt required. Correct?
Much like we did this morning, deferring Mr. Sims. Mr. Rudolph?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think so the game plan is the consultants will have a report in front of you. We're targeting February, March with respect to the security plan in the downtown. They will be addressing, well, they'll be visiting with the policing matter. They will be also visiting with the bylaw services role and also the security piece, which has been temporarily funded. So, and it's a comprehensive assessment of all those, how those resources are working right now, where are the weaknesses and opportunities to enhance. So the one bottom line conclusion is I can assume there will be a funding attachment to those recommendations that come in at that time. So that they could be phased in over a period of time as well. So this may well have come forward anyway. I'm not suggesting that this is contingent upon that study, and the superintendent can speak to that because they may have determined that this is something to go for anyway, but it is certainly aligned with the issue of security in the downtown. So you do have that option to await for the final recommendations of that, but I suspect it's not entirely tied to that issue.
Thank you. I'm going to let Superintendent Fletcher speak first, and then on to Councillors Bonner, Thorpe, and Hemmons in order.
Thank you, Your Worship. As Mr. Rudolph has indicated, there is the downtown security assessment coming. And when we were looking at this budget cycle, we knew that the downtown study was coming, and we also were taking Mr. Hurley's report in terms of our staffing levels into account and the fact that we are understaffed. So this is a proposal that is kind of a merging of those two themes, recognizing the pressure being in the downtown area, the impact that our bike unit has been carrying in terms of trying to increase the livability in the downtown core for the businesses, that this would be a way to augment the number of police officers in the downtown core so that they could handle calls for service in the downtown and then allow police officers in patrol cars to push further out into the city to increase their capacity there. In terms of approval, if this is something you're considering and you want to delay it, that makes some sense as you get a comprehensive plan. One of the other things to potentially consider is the approval of the positions with a determination of how we look at it. The reason I say that is it's the position numbers and the process that goes along with the funding of the municipal along with the RCMP piece that gets complex and time consuming. And so it's a way to kind of start the process with a later determination down the road of how that's applied. It takes us realistically 6 to 9 months to put anything into place, and that then starts the staffing process. because people are not just sitting in Nanaimo waiting to become RCMP officers. They are somewhere within the province or the country or Regina right now. So that is something that you could be aware of and use that accordingly. So.
Thank you very much. In order, Councillors Bonner, Thorpe, Hemmons, and Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate the motion or the idea that we might want to look at this once that report's in, but I don't see the two of them tied together. Because the report that we're going to get is going to be how we are going to deal with security. And I remember the first rule that I was told when we started this job, we pay for the RCMP, but we don't tell them what to do. So this is a recommendation coming from the RCMP. This is what they would like to see down there. I couldn't see a report coming forward saying don't put more bikes patrols downtown. So I don't see that happening. I kind of would prefer to rip the bandage off today and let everybody get mad at us and just carry on, other than to try and pick away at this budget. I don't mind taking some of it off as we go along, which we've done in the past pretty well every single year. But if we delay this one, then we're just going to be adding it on in a time where it's quite close to the end of our budget cycle in terms of its March. And it may or may not get delayed. So I'd rather deal with this today if it's okay. I mean, you can always take it out. Just putting it back in is going to be problematic later on.
Thank you, Councillor Bonner. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. My position on this is that I strongly value the bike patrol units that we currently have, and I would support option one, but I also hear the words of Mr. Rudolph regarding waiting for more information from the report that's forthcoming. So I'm a little bit of two minds on this. As Councillor Bonner said, we could just deal with it now, one way or the other, or we could wait, and there's some ramification to doing that in terms of staffing. So I'll listen to what other councillors say, but if there is a motion today towards option one, I will be supporting that. But I'm also willing to wait until we get more information. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move option one.
Seconded, Councillor Brown. Speak to it.
Yes, I know this is painful in terms of our increase, our potential tax increase that we're contemplating. However, I can't imagine that downtown safety plan is going to say, yeah, we don't need any more police officers. And I agree with Councillor Bonner that plan is not geared towards what are our RCMP needs, but what are our overall city needs. So that will come with a budget ask in terms of what the city needs. But it's never going to come with a reduction of police service request. I think most of you know I had the opportunity to join the bike patrol a few weeks ago and saw firsthand the relationships with local downtown residents and business owners and how much that goes towards feeling safe. So this is a really easy one for me, and I would be happy to see it in the budget.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I'd be supporting this. I think this is very important. We already know that our police force here is probably 50 members under-resourced compared to comparable, and that's not even including our foul loads or crime rates. The only concern I had, which I shared before, is I don't like to see it just designated for the downtown area, because I believe the bike squad, even though I know they would have to be dropped off up there, would be extremely beneficial for the Labio and Country Club area, where there's a huge increase in crime. And I think that they can get places that cars can't. And to Councillor Martman's point, even with the addition of more supportive housing, that still does not stop the calls of service for the police to those units, because there's a lot of them. So I think it's very well needed, and I'll be in support of this. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Your Worship. The reason I'm going to support this is that I think a disproportionate and an unfortunate amount of time is being tied up for RCMP members with things that ultimately aren't crime. And, little option than to hope that at some point in the next couple decades that that will diminish. I think a couple decades is the appropriate time frame to be looking at this. And if I think those social problems that absolutely need to get sorted because they're inhumane to all those involved, at that point I still don't see a need for a reduction in members. I would hope at that time that maybe we don't have to look at drastic increases to members because we're able to shift what the RCM doing or just occupying their time back to what it should be doing, and that is things with the criminal element. But I don't think the criminal element that has existed in our society and our city, and disproportionately so, is ever going to disappear in my lifetime. What I am hopeful for is what the members are directing their time and attention to will shift, and it will be only that criminal element that they're focused on. But regardless, I think that we have to respond to the challenges that are present in front of us and be realistic about them. And this isn't, I'm not a huge, I'm not a supporter of police forces, but I think sometimes they're a crutch to solve issues that aren't theirs to solve, and I think that's really sad for those folks involved. But it's the reality that's in front of us right now, and so I will be supporting this.
Councillor Thorpe, then Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. So hearing the comments of other councillors and the motion that's now on the floor, I'll certainly support this. As I indicated I would if it was put forward. I think the bike patrol is extremely valuable to our city, and certainly downtown security, I think, is something we have to focus on. I like the idea that they'll be working together with the community outreach team, and also, as the superintendent has pointed out, this will help free up other officers to do duties in other areas of the town, possibly. So I'm happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Turley, and then Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not going to support this because I agree with Mr. Rudolph. We've just voted to have 5 new support staff, which superintendent has indicated will help free up some time with the members, and I think we need to, at the best, wait a year to see how that all works out, and then make a decision then. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong. Okay. The pride of most cities is their downtown. There's not much question about that. I mean, you don't think of the suburbs of Portland, that's not why you go to Portland. You don't think of the burbs of Vancouver, that's not why you go to Vancouver. You go to see the downtowns of cities. Having said that, we are in a particular moment in time and in history where, as a result of, and I've said this many times before, serious mistakes around social and health policy, we have seen a street population grow that lives in misery, and that creates a fair amount of misery for the citizens who want to go to their downtowns, for the businesses that operate there, and their employees. I'm not going to be pointing fingers this morning. We collectively as a society let this happen, and we've got the result, and it's a mess, and it's a human tragedy. The reality is the city is neither in a position legally, jurisdictionally, or financially to solve those issues, and I appreciate that there are some passionate members of council who I think quite legitimately would be prepared to spend more city money to deal with this. I just can't support that concept philosophically. However, we have to deal with the reality of the situation as it exists now. The fact is there are many of our citizens who will not go downtown, who fear going downtown, who live in fear in their neighborhoods, as Councillor Armstrong pointed out, around Labio in particular, a country club area. I'm not voting for this out of a sense of fear or a sense of being forced to. It is the right thing to do for public safety at this time. I don't think there's any question about that. If we expect our downtown to gain the kind of health that's expected of a downtown in a city of this size, there's only one way to do it realistically. From our ability to affect it, and that is to encourage densification, which we are. And this council has a very fine record. It is providing enhancements that make us look like a modern city, bike lanes on Front Street, improvements like that, access to the city. But it also involves security. So this is the right thing to do. I certainly will support it and hope that we don't have to wait a decade or two before things are actually that much better, that in fact we'll see some real improvements, as Councillor Martman's pointed out earlier this morning, around the housing that's coming. I think it will help. And if it doesn't help, it only emphasizes how serious the problem is, and maybe that convinces the province and the federal government to provide the kinds of resources that are necessary to genuinely solve this. So if anyone else wishes to say something in response, please. If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Contrary? Councillor Turley. Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, Superintendent. Ms. Mercer.
Thank you. So the next slide relates to, or the next two slides relate to the aquatic development plan. So this is to support the adequate supervision of 90+ staff and provide the necessary resources to create and sustain an enhanced team-based workplace environment. So their option 1 is full implementation of the plan in 2022, and that comes with an approximate 0.26% increase in 2022, funded from taxation. Option 2 is a phased implementation plan of the plan, and that is a 0.12% increase in 2022. And option 3, as outlined in the business case, is that council directs staff to come up with alternative solutions. Now, they may be able to find a cost-neutral solution. So that's the benefit of option 3, but the weakness is a reduction in service levels within the Recreation and Culture Department may be necessary to support the support needed in aquatics. So those are your 3 options. I know Ms. Wark is here if you have any questions. So happy to have discussion on this slide.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bonner, and then Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Worship. I'm more partial to Plan B on this one, which is the second option. But I do have a question. We're talking about head lifeguards here, and I'm looking at the financial plan of the business plan here. Option 1, additional off-deck hours for head lifeguards at $268,000 in 2022. But these are already lifeguards we're paying, I'm guessing, who are already the head lifeguards. So in order to get them off the deck, we actually have to hire lifeguards at I'm guessing a lower rate. So I'm not sure how this dollar amount came to be. Does it represent us hiring a bunch of lifeguards so that it frees up the head lifeguard, or how does that work?
Through your worship to Councillor Bonner, yes, that's exactly what it is. We need to hire more lifeguards to be on deck, which will in turn support the head guards to be able to be off deck performing all their supervisory duties.
Yeah, it didn't really say that in here. It just says getting them off is $268,000 off deck.
Well, excuse me, through your worship to Councillor Bonner. So that cost represents how much it costs to hire the lifeguards. So it's paying for the lifeguard wages.
And do we have a number of lifeguards that will be hired?
Through your worship to Councillor Bonner, I don't know exactly how many lifeguards that will represent. What that is the number of hours that we need to cover all of the shifts in the 2 major aquatic facilities, which equals 190 hours weekly.
Okay, thank you. And if I may, reason I'm kind of partial to number 2 is it's kind of limping along now, right? And I thought a phased approach over time would certainly be something that would be doable, as opposed to, I just quote myself again, ripping the bandage off now and just doing it. But I thought number 2 on this one, but I'll wait for everyone else to talk.
That ripping off the bandage analogy is making me feel uncomfortable this morning, Councillor Bonner. It's very painful. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I noticed in this one, staff didn't bring us an option to remain status quo. And when you presented to us, I really got the sense that this was a necessary. So from my perspective, our decision is, do we fund it this year or do we fund it in a phased piece? I'm not a fan of pushing taxes into the next years, because I think it's our responsibility to understand the service levels that our citizens require and tax accordingly. So I've heard you make a strong argument. I understand that we could ask you to come back with alternative options, but I'm guessing you've done that already, and these are the options you've presented. So I'm actually in favor of option 1, and I'm absolutely in favor of buffering the service that most residents in Nanaimo would identify as a city service. I think Parks and Rec and our pools are where I think we have a lot of touch points with people, youth, with seniors, et cetera. So it's, this is necessary to me, and I'm in support of option 1 at this point.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. And like Councillor Hemmons, I would be supportive of option 1 as well. And I look at the benefits of the head lifeguards will have time to focus on the provision of leadership, supervision, and the training requirements. They'll be able to provide more direct customer service. And that's what this is all about. Our Parks and Recreation is about serving the citizens in our city. And I look at aquatics as actually part of safety, being that we live on an island. So I'm all supportive of fully implementing the plan. Option number 1.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Similar to the previous discussion, I was a little bit of two minds on this. I think we've heard from Ms. Wark, and we've also heard from the public the importance of our aquatics program here in the city to our citizens and our residents. And for me, it was either option 1 or option 2. I think we need to do something to improve things at the pool. So I'm prepared to move option 1 to get it on the floor. I think we're at that stage of the discussion.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. Wish to speak further?
Thank you, Your Worship. When it comes to recreation facilities, I think it's been made very clear that aquatics is the highest priority for our citizens, gets the most use, and we need to improve our service level there, and I think this is a way of doing that. So I'll support the motion that I've put forward.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks, Your Worship. I definitely believe that these changes are necessary. I'm a little bit wary just about the tax implications, and yeah, would rather support a phased implementation, and that's so I won't be supporting this motion, but would support option 2. Thank you.
This is always Councillor Bonner. Sorry.
You can go ahead if you like.
Thank you. The question of pools is always a challenging one for me, and I want to explain why so that people understand this. Let me start firstly with the proposition that I think the people who work at the pools are devoted and passionate and provide excellent service to a portion of our population who are regular and avid users of the pools. That includes my grandchildren to some extent, and a number of seniors and people with physical challenges who find it easier to exercise in water, etc. Literally 365 days of the year, give or take a few holidays here and there. My environmental side says to me, as I said to the Rotary Club the other night when I was their guest speaker, in the 21st century, with climate change screaming at us, Mother Nature telling us we can't keep doing this, I still have a bit of a philosophical problem with the concept that the most heavily subsidized portion, I think, of our recreation facilities, and Ms. Wark will correct me if I'm wrong, are in fact our pools. It takes a lot of energy to heat a lot of water in those pools. And so On one hand, I see the incredible public use, the happy family occasions, all of the things that go with it. And I'm conscious of the fact that there's also a very strong lobby, and we've heard it this year, for more outdoor recreation and or semi-indoor recreation, including pickleball, which always brings a smile to Councillor Brown's face and Councillor Bonner's face, having recommended me for pickleball. So I'm very tempted, just as a matter of record, because I think this is going to pass, to vote against it on that basis. Not because I have something against the good people who use them, but simply because it's one of those little things that we all have our little things about, things where we think the environment or the community could be better or made worse by some small decision. I'll be very interested to hear what Councillor Bonner has to say. I think I'm done speaking to this and wavering. So Councillor Bonner, give me some guidance.
Oh, sorry about this. I was actually going to talk on something else, but if I may ask one little question before I get into my little rant, are we at full capacity of participants using the pools as we were pre-COVID?
Through your worship to Councillor Bonner, yes, we're back to 100% capacity.
Yeah, okay, all right, and that makes the thing. And I understand where the mayor's coming through is. Actually, the part I was going to talk about is I was going to wax politically on our budget. And I know Councillor Hemmond said they don't want to pass tax increases on to next year, but that's exactly what we're due here. We pass a 5-year budget, which has tax increases in every single year of that 5-year budget. And we review it each year. So I don't have a problem with passing a budgetary item that covers over a number of years as an implementation process, which we do every single time we look at these budgets. In this particular case, I'm still leaning towards option 2 because I think this is something that could be phased in without interfering with the safety of our residents who use these pools. And so in this particular case, I'm not going to vote in favor of option 1. I think option 2 is a better option in this particular case. And I appreciate what the mayor is saying about the cost of these pools. I think that's not a hill I particularly wish to die on, suggesting that all our folks start using the lakes during this time of year. But certainly, I think it's something we definitely need to look at in the future. Thank you.
And your worship, Councillor Armstrong has her hand raised.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I'll be voting in favor of this for the simple fact that the pools are used by people of all ages. It's available for everybody, no matter what your socioeconomic status is. And for the third thing, our pools are very much used by people for rehabilitation. And without them, and as we saw through COVID, a lot of people really suffered. So I think this is really important. And the difference between 1 and 2 is maybe less than $1 over the year for our residents. So I think it's very important to support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing anyone else. All those in favor, it's option 1. Councillors Martman, Hemmons, Krog, Thorpe, and Armstrong. And opposed? Councillors Brown, Bonner, and Turley. Motion. And Gesselbrock. Motion carries. Thank you very much. That was an interesting debate. Thank you, Ms. Warwick.
Our next item is the lead supervisor for parks, trails, and natural areas. And this provides additional resources to proactively manage park assets in a planned and strategic fashion. So this would have a February 15th implementation date and an approximate 0.17% increase in 2022. Now this does include some one-time capital costs in 2022 that wouldn't be needed in 2023. So you'd see a slight decrease in the costing of this position for 2023. And option number 2 is to not include it. So Mr. Groot is here to answer any questions you have regarding this position.
Mr. Groot, do you want to say anything, or you just want to wait for questions?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just here for questions.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Groot. We've added a lot of natural areas and parks to the city over the last, I say probably the last 8 years. With those additions, have there been additional increases to your staff?
Through your worship to Councillor Armstrong, no, there hasn't been.
So based on that, and I take a look at, you know, we made the Colliery Forest into a park. We've made Lindley Valley. We're adding more and more. And I think in order to do service to the community, we actually need people to look after those parks. So I'll be voting in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship. I won't be supporting this. This may come as a shock to many, but I do use trails in Lindley Valley and the one below me on below Fairview and a few others. And quite frankly, I think they're very adequate. Are they premium? No, but I'm walking, so I don't expect to, if I have to walk around a mud puddle, I'm okay with that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turley. I'm Councillor Arms. You're off again. Anyone going to make a motion one way or the other?
I will.
Councillor Martman, the recommended motion, option 1, so to speak, as opposed. All right. Second, Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Martman, do you want to speak to it?
Just that with number one, our parks is what we enjoy the most. I think that came out in the survey. And I think with maintaining our parks and again, safety, etc., the addition of a parks maintenance worker will allow parks operations to, oh, that's the playground one. This is the parks operation. It's to meet the high expectations of the community. It's constantly evolving and there's large demand. So I support it.
Councillor Thorpe, then Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'll support this, and to Councillor Martman's comment, I'll be supporting the next one too, if that motion comes on the floor. I think from our Reimagine Nanaimo survey results to this point, the public indicated that parks and trails usage was their #1 priority by far. And I think we need to respond to that by providing adequate resources. I recall Mr. Rudolph telling us quite frankly that the Parks and Recreation Department had been reticent in past years to come forward with requests, and I frankly think it's their turn to beef up their staffing levels a little bit. So I'm willing to bite the bullet on this one and support this, as I say, and the next position as well. Thanks.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Your Worship. I have a question, but first just a comment. As I was just sitting here reflecting back to our strategic plan session and how hard it was, or basically all our strategic objectives had like 5 or 4 votes in support, and there was no clear priorities. And I think it's funny to see that reflected in budget, because on any given issue, it seems like you can probably get 5 votes to support a position. It's going to be a different 5. So I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's just a reflection. My question for Mr. Groot here is, if you are able to, or comfortable answering this question, if you had to choose between the Parks, Trails, and Natural Areas lead supervisor or the Parks Maintenance Workers Playground as the one that is the most urgently in need, which one would it be?
Through your worship to Councillor Brown, it was something that we contemplated and had lots of discussion on. And on the maintenance and inspection side for the playgrounds, you know, we're not able to get ahead. But on the same side, from a strategic management perspective, with the additional resources or additional assets, assets, not resources, that get added to the portfolio, we're not able to strategically manage or plan or look forward. So we're always in this reactive kind of mode. So for the manager to be able to have that capacity to start strategically planning ahead of our operations, I would say that if we had to choose, we would choose the lead supervisor role.
Okay, thank you for that. Thanks.
Someone mentioned the other day that there is a plague of scorpions in Egypt related to the weather, and I understand at Ayers Rock, frogs that normally live underground essentially have been driven upwards by the rain, and the line was made of maybe it's the apocalypse. It was Ms. Gurry, in her usual charming, witty way, mentioned this, and that made me think about the Ten Commandments. And I'm leading to a point here, believe it or not. I remember the scene in the 56 version where the Egyptian slave masters drive the Israelites even harder to build the pyramid. And essentially, that's what we've been doing for a number of years in this city with our park system. We have been expanding the number of parks, and God bless previous councils for doing it. And this council has done its bit too. But we have done so with really no significant or real increase in the numbers of people we expect to maintain them. And if COVID has taught us anything, our parks become even more important as we're stuck closer to home for recreation and all of these things. So I will happily support this position and expect that council probably will as well on this one. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. I thank you for the biblical quotes. From my point of view, when you start going down this road, I bring in the biblical quote. Oh my God, where is he going with this now? So I appreciate your comments, and I agree with you. I do have a question though. Will this lead supervisor help with the maintenance, proactively doing the maintenance of the playgrounds, or are they just not related at all?
Through your worship to Councillor Bonner. So they won't be on the tools position. It's a position to then supervise and plan for the work for the 4 different groups that are currently in parks operations.
Okay, thank you.
Not seeing anyone else. All those in favor? Any contrary? Councillor Turley. I won't reference tightwad this morning. No, I won't reference that. Thank you, Mr. Crute, on this one. And the next, Ms. Mercer.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the next position is the Parks Maintenance Worker for Playgrounds, and that's to enhance playground maintenance, moving towards a more proactive maintenance model. Option is to add the position for April 1st. Approximate tax increases of 0.16% in 2022. And again, like the last position, there are some one-time capital costs associated with the position in 2022, which again, we wouldn't need in 2023. So option 2 is to keep status quo and not add anything. Mr. Green?
Excuse me, Your Worship.
Yes, thank you. I see you, Councillor Gesselbrock.
Yeah, I unfortunately have to excuse myself. Thank you, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you. Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Just to get it on the table, I'll actually move option number 1.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe.
And just to speak to it, because I would like to read, with the participants of Reimagine Nanaimo Phase 1, we did actually have one participant comment. Many of the playground facilities are old, rundown, and broken. Now, they mentioned that we have improved Maffeo Sutton, but right now with the way I read the report, we're mostly reactive, not proactive. And anything we can do to help our children's playgrounds and make it safer and more beautiful, I'm all for it.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Mr. Groot. Given the weather conditions during some months of the year, is this deemed to be a full-time position or something that's more seasonably adjusted?
Through your worship to Councillor Turley, no, it would be considered a permanent full-time position just based on the sheer volume or quantity of playgrounds that exist out there. And again, residents of the Wet Coast, there's not a lot of days where we don't have families and children on our playgrounds.
Thank you.
Any further comments from anyone? All those in favor? Councillors Martman, Krogh, Thorpe, Bonner, and Armstrong. Opposed? Councillors Hemmons, Brown, and Turley. Motion carries.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council.
Ms. Mercer.
Okay, so we're finished with all the business cases. So we'll move on to the items that some of these can reduce the tax rate, and there is an add or two in there. So our first one is item number 2, and that's the Climate Action Reserve. So this reserve replaced the Sustainability and Emissions Reduction Reserves in 2021, and as their funding sources either were eliminated or severely reduced. So at the July Finance and Audit Committee meeting, it was asked to include the $165,000 as the contribution to this new Climate Action Reserve, and then have discussion on that as during budget deliberations as if that's an appropriate amount or not. So option one is to keep the $165,000 contribution to the reserve, or option two is to reduce it. So we've given an example of, say, 100,000, and if you reduce that contribution, it's approximately a 0.05% reduction. So those are kind of the options that we have up there, and we're happy to have any discussion on this.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't be putting forward a motion, but my personal belief is this needs to be treated like asset management and have an annual contribution associated with the percentage. I won't be putting forward that time because I think I know where it would go. But again, it's just like asset management, just like public social policy from many years ago now. It is a true error not to be putting money towards, I think, mitigation efforts and also adaptation efforts. So $165,000, I hope everybody will keep that in there. But it's woefully inadequate to responding to the challenges of our time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Ms. Mercer, Ms. Fuller. So is the $165,000, is that included in the 1% increase in the reserves?
Yes, through your worship, to Councillor Turley, it's included in the budget, and so our current tax rates include that increase.
But it's the 1% addition for reserves that it's included
in addition to that, yes.
Was it on top of that?
On top of that, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to say that I agree with Councillor Brown's philosophical point, but I do want to understand better what currently comes out of this reserve, what are the pressures on it, and how much remains. Again, I'm sorry, I don't have my computer.
That's okay. I will have Ms. Fuller, that's a good question, and I'll have Ms. Fuller pull up the reserve sheet, and she can let you know exactly what's come out of there and where we're at.
And if I may, just as she's looking, I completely agree with Councillor Brown, and therefore I'm not sure that reducing our reserve by $65,000 this year is actually going to impact us, because we need to be looking at a lot more money in the future. And particularly, I'm curious what's being drawn from this reserve, because I don't imagine it's the pointy end of our work around the environment. That we're doing that across portfolios, that this $65,000 isn't going to make or break this.
Right, so this funding is for any initiatives or projects that come up that meet the criteria of that reserve. So, you go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Hemmons. So an example of some of the projects that have been funded and are being funded this year from the reserve include the real ice machines that we did at our arena, so that you can now use cool water when you re-ice the surfaces rather than hot water. We've also funded a number of studies that have looked at improvements to our facilities in relation to their mechanical and HVAC systems, to looking at reducing our GHGs. We funded the building inspectors' electric vehicles from there. We've also funded the funding that we put towards the Clean BC Better Homes Rebate Program. So our contribution to that program comes from there. And then going forward, we actually will have a report coming up shortly about some improvements at the Port Theatre for the HVAC. So we'll be looking to fund the additional funding we need from there, should council approve that. And so right now, the projected opening balance, what I just had on that sheet. So right now, we'd have an opening balance about $559,000 for 2022, but that doesn't reflect the request that'll be coming to you at the December Finance and Audit.
And may I ask, do you have a number or a figure on the ask coming for the Port Theatre? Will the reserve cover it?
I do. Let me just pull that up. I'll just need a moment. It would, so the request is coming from staff because we maintain the Port Theatre. So the request, just to be clear, is not coming from the Port Theatre. It wouldn't be a grant to them. It would be $255,000 we'd be looking to draw down the reserve.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to add, I think Councillor Hammond asked a good question there, but I think there's another way to look at how, well, following the bouncing ball a little bit, this reserve was the collapsing of two previous reserves, and one of the ones that was collapsed was based on, well, it was a new reserve that we created, as one was on the books that that needed to be modernized a little bit. But the genesis of that particular reserve was to put aside money based on the corporate carbon emissions, carbon equivalency emissions of our organization. That was not updated over time. It was set at, I want to say 2010 levels, and it was supposed to increase, but it was never increased. So basically, you were supposed to put money into the reserve based on a calculation based on the carbon equivalencies of the GHGs that the organization was emitting. So I think that genesis is important to understand why this reserve exists and what its intentions was for. So the idea was that you would invest that money into community initiatives that would ultimately reduce the community's overall GHG emissions. So I just wanted that to be very clear. The second thing, and I think it's important, and Mayor Krogh touched upon it, is around some of our community buildings that emit. I think as we move forward, the responsible thing to do is, if you have a pool, which is undoubtedly something that you want to retain and have those sort of community amenities, the responsible thing to do, and some of it's already been done and has been funded by some of these reserve funds or similar, is to see the conversion of those into lower GHG emitters, the changing of boilers, all those sorts of things. So moving forward, I just have to highlight that if we want the nice things in our community that it deserves and still respond to the things we know we have to, because if we don't, I think you have to respond one way or the other. And severe weather events, fires, et cetera. So again, it might seem like a very minor amount, but it undoubtedly will need to increase. Thanks.
This is one of those situations where the symbolism is not only important, I think it's wise to remind ourselves that we have it. And one thing that occurs to me, following on the discussion about the pools, there's an awful lot of hot air, with great respect, that comes off our pools. And by the hot air, I just mean the steam and the warmth and all of those things. I mean, if some bright wag in this community wants to come up with a concept around food security that involves the use of that wasted heat for the production of vegetables in our community and wants to find a funding source, it strikes me that this is one of those little small innovations that might send a signal to the world. It'll keep all the pool users happy, so I won't look like the Grinch. It'll make the environmentalists happy because it's using energy that we are producing. Because it seems to me this fund should be used for essentially the two purposes, as already discussed, and that is to either actually reduce our emissions by way of limiting the production of them, or alternatively capturing them. If someone proposed to me we spend $200,000 or $300,000 more planting trees around this community, and some bright person up at VIU can tell me that's a more effective way of using the money and will in fact benefit the planet more, then let's do that. But I think we should probably, as council, try and use this fund in an innovative way that draws attention to things that can make a difference. I mean, I think we're told that, as Councillor Brown pointed out, that our building structures are horrendous emitters, essentially, and so let's see if we can do something innovative. So I throw the challenge out to staff because, frankly, I've always believed, and this staff has been very good in the last couple of years when they felt a certain freedom to come up with things that might be innovative, that would make use of what we have in a different and more challenging way. I get back to my old favorite analogy, the family farm. Nothing got wasted If the kids weren't eating it, the pigs ate it, and we know what happened to the pigs eventually. And we know what happened to their manure and everything else. If you want to talk about a circular economy and a recyclable society, it just seems to me there's a whole series of ways we might be able to use the money in this fund. And it is for that reason that I would not support a motion to reduce the reserve. So, anything further, anyone? I was going to say she can't get it if she blackens her screen. So, Councillor Armstrong, where have you gone?
She's left the meeting now, Your Worship.
She's gone. Sorry, okay. All right, well, now we're down to 7. On to the next item, Ms. Mercer, as I'm not seeing anybody else.
Okay, our next item is relating to pavement preservation. So this year in the budget, it includes a $50,000 increase for pavement preservation. And Mr. Sims is here to answer any questions you have about that. Your options are to maintain the draft budget with the $50,000 increase, or your second option is to remove the $50,000 increase. If you did choose to remove it, that's approximate a 0.04% reduction. So I'll hand it over to Mr. Sims.
Mr. Sims.
Your Worship, this is really, as we outlined before, an opportunity to apply some techniques to some of our marginal roads that we can extend their life a little bit. I'm happy to sort of expand or not on that, but this is not to augment the repaving program, which, as Mr. Elliott said, is not keeping up with what our hopes would be, but that's going to be the subject of further study. This is just we'll just call it maintaining. Let's say driveway sealing to simplify it, just to stretch the life of the driveways.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. In order, Councillors Bonner, Martman, and Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm in favor of option 1 on this one. I think it's important that we maintain and find ways to extend the life of the pavement that we're putting down. We need it, and we need it to last longer than it's doing right now. So I'm quite in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Martman.
Thank you. I concur with Councillor Bonner, and I just thinking of the sinkhole in Lansville, and I think anything we can do and reduce the backlog of identified work, absolutely we need to stay there.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Sims, do we have any idea of the rough number of kilometers the $50,000 would patch?
That's a good question, Your Worship. I think this is really about some of the roads. Like, it's an extension of the crack sealing program, so we can undertake sort of other techniques that it'd be similar to that. So I'm sorry, I don't have a quantity. But.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say, I feel like this one, the same way I did as the last one. We're talking about the environment and taking care of pavement, both huge things that we need to pay attention to, but both very, very small amounts that we're debating. So I don't believe that $50,000 is going to advance us dramatically, just like I don't think $65,000 is going to advance our environmental agenda. So I'm actually inclined for option 2 on this one.
I have Councillor Thorpe.
Thanks, Your Worship. So recognizing that option 1 has no motion required, I'm not in favor of eliminating the money for pavement preservation. And I think when we had this discussion earlier, I used the expression, penny wise and pound foolish. I think that's what we'd be doing if we reduced the amount here. So I'm in favor of option 1, which is no motion.
Thank you, Councillor. And we have no motion, and no motion been seconded. So Mr. Sims, thank you.
Thanks, Worship.
Ms. Mercer.
Our next item is relating to the landscaping for the Boxwood Detention Pond. So we have a budget increase of $67,000 in the current draft plan. And this is for contracted landscaping services for the Boxwood Detention Pond. So your option is to maintain the draft budget and keep the 67,000 in, or your option 2 is to remove it. And if you chose to remove it, it's an approximate property taxation of a 0.06% reduction. And staff is here to talk to this if you have any questions.
Councillor Hemmons and then Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Groot. If we remove this, then we'll be in a scenario next year where we have to add it in order to get this required work done. What this is giving us is an option to bump it into next year. Is that accurate?
Through Your Worship, it ends up being an amount of money where the work still needs to be done. So we'd have to find an alternative way to fund it through a service level reduction elsewhere, or have staff try to take it on in their existing portfolios. So it's not really an option of not doing it. It's more so a service level impact in an existing operating budget.
Thank you. In that case, I'm a fan of option 1. I think as we're trying to resource our city, so we're being proactive rather than reactive, it's minor things like this that count. So I'll leave as is.
Robbing penny to pay Paul, especially the repealed Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Turley and then Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Groot. So I think I asked this question before, but it's basically to remove the area of invasive species. And is there any thought being given to doing half this year and then half next year, and then again starting the whole ball rolling again?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Turley. So yeah, after last meeting, we did go and talk to staff about that. And the worry there is, if you're doing half the work, you're allowing for the invasive species to kind of overtake the area at a potentially quicker rate each, or a proportionately larger rate each year, because you don't really get on top of it. And there could be that kind of exponential growth of the invasive species where it's taking over quicker than a phased approach. So the idea is to really focus on the work in the first couple of years to see how that see how the $67,000 does, but also what the true workload is for the area.
And if I could have a follow-up question, please. So I haven't actually been to see that area over the last few years, but is there a significant amount of invasive species there now?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Turley, to be honest, I've not been there myself either.
Okay.
But the maintenance, what I can say is that there was a requirement for the work to be done, through the contractor, through the work previously. So now it's just that additional resourcing for ourselves to take it on.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm certainly in favor of option 1. Not unlike the last one we just talked about. It's preservation of something that we've already paid for and we need. And I read it, the detention pond was completed in 2021 for the purpose of preventing localized flooding while returning the water to the earth. And that's exactly what it did this last rainfall. So why on earth would we think of letting it go to seed? So I'm very much in favor of no motion required.
And I'm not seeing anyone move the motion, so thank you very much, Mr. Groot. Ms. Mercer.
Okay, our next item relates to public art maintenance. So we had a new budget of $25,000 to ensure the longevity of the city's public art collection. So your options available are to maintain that budget at $25,000, or you can remove that budget. And if you chose to remove it, it's an approximate 0.02% tax reduction. And staff is here to talk to this slide if you had any questions.
Ms. Warwick, good morning again.
Good morning. I'm available to answer questions.
Council? I don't think anyone wants to reduce the maintenance for public art. Good. Ms. Wark, thank you very much.
No problem.
Brevity is the soul of, advocacy.
Your worship, Councillor Turley.
Oh, pardon me, Councillor Turley. Sorry.
That's okay.
I should have known.
So I seem to recall when we had that picture frame down at Swilana Park that fell apart. There was an issue at that time of not being able to replace it because of some propriety issues with the artist. So the artists that do these public art displays, is there a time limit as to how long, or is it ability? I guess my question is, I'm assuming we're contracted when it comes in to actually maintain it, or is it just because we want to make it look and get the longest use out of it?
Through your worship to Councillor Turley, it depends whether the art piece is a permanent piece of public art or a temporary piece of public art. But traditionally in the past, we have not had a line item to maintain any of the artwork pieces. So this is the introduction of that line item so that we can maintain our public art pieces that are either permanent or temporary. So our current temporary art program, for example, will have artworks that are on display between 3 to 5 years, and they may need a touch-up or they may need repair due to vandalism or something like that in the course of that lifespan.
Thank you.
Councillor Bonner?
Thank you, Worship. Further to that, I know that we had talked about this, and before the art frame was the frame was taken down, it had undergone significant amount of maintenance over the years to make it last as long as it did. Where did that money come from?
Through the mayor to Councillor Bonner, unfortunately, that was before my time, so I'm not aware of where those funds were found. Maybe Mr. Groot knows.
The corporate memory is a little longer with Mr. Groot.
Through your worship to Councillor Bonner. So specific to the picture frame, that just got absorbed into out of park operations. And the picture frame itself was intended to be kind of a short-term install. Some of the material used was kind of interior grade. And due to its popularity, it was just a decision to keep, trying to extend its presence in the park for as long as possible. So long answer, or short answer, or long answer to a short question is it was park operations funded.
So so it wasn't much money that was budgeted. You just managed to find some money in maintenance somewhere to do that.
Correct.
So this line item here means that you won't be having to pull it out of other places. You will have the $25,000 to maintain the artwork.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not seeing anyone else. So thank you, Mr. Groot, Ms. Wark. Ms. Mercer?
Okay, our next item is the urban design roster. So at the June Finance and Audit Committee meeting, it was moved and seconded that council consider an increase of $25,000 to the public art budget during this financial plan deliberations to support the urban design roster initiative. So we have included the $25,000 per year in the budget for public art projects. So this slide doesn't have a tax impact. And as you know, a portion of our project funding comes from taxation, and we have a set amount each year for funding for projects in the project plan that comes from revenue or taxes, sorry. And the $25,000 is included in the $7.4 million that we have budgeted to fund projects in 2022 from taxation. So there is no tax impact to this, because what we would do is we would take that $25,000 and fund another project with it if you chose to reduce the budget. So it's more of a funding question than it is a tax reduction at this point. So, but it was an add, so that's why it's a decision slide for this year. So again, Ms. Wark is here if you have any questions regarding that, or Mr. Groot.
Not seeing any questions, Ms. Wark. I think we're going for option 1, no motion required. Unless I see something to the contrary. Ms. Mercer, please.
Okay, so the slide that we ended with last week is number 8, which is the National Indigenous People Day and the Truth and Reconciliation Day. So the 2 slides coming up speak to the 3 options available for this. So the National Indigenous Peoples Day, which is June 21st, and the Truth and Reconciliation Day, which is September 30th, are not currently, there's no funding in our current budget to put on any events for these days. So what option 1 is proposing is that we add $60,000 to the budget in annual funding for these events. And option 1 would result in a approximate increase of 0.05 to fund $60,000 per year starting in 2022. So Mr. Lindsay is here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lindsay. Welcome. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move option 1.
Sorry?
I would like to move option 1.
Seconded. Option 1. Councillor Brown, you wish to speak to it?
I don't think much needs to be said.
Councillor Turley?
Thank you, Worship. A couple of questions to Mr. Lindsay. Or actually, it might be Ms. Mercer. Of the $150,000, which I assume was in the budget last year for downtown events, was it completely used or were there funds left over?
Last year we did have, because of COVID, not all of the funds were used, but in a normal year, yes, all the funds are allocated.
Okay.
So in option 2, sorry, I did mean to go through that, is option 2 was to take the $60,000 from the existing $150,000 in the annual downtown events grant. So that was, there's no tax impact to that option, but it is an option.
And my second question would be to Ms. Mercer, I assume as well. The Canada Day celebrations, I'm assuming they come from taxation dollars, the funds spent on those?
Yes, any budget for celebrations are operating, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Lindsay, you've spoken to Ms. Wark. Can you add a...
The only thing I wanted to add to that discussion, Your Worship, is that we currently have a call out for this year, coming up for next year for the events in the downtown, and we have strong interest, and there's actually applications that are in excess of the $150,000. So those are in the process of being adjudicated, but I just wanted council to know that there seems to be a demand to get back at having events in the downtown. So.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. I'm in favor of option 1 and or would have been in favor of option 2. I would like to draw to the attention of everyone here that even if we go with option 1, that represents $210,000, which represents 0.1% of our entire budget is spent on events that we're bringing people into our downtown, which is something we should have a real serious concern about and be looking at in the future to see if we can't up that some way, so we can have some decent, cool parties.
Nicely put. I'm not seeing any other speakers. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
So when that takes us back to where we started this morning. So what we can do is we will compile all of the decisions that the committee has made at this point. And after the break, we can bring that up and show you where we sit approximately. And then we can have any further discussions on items that you wish.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mercer. Very timely. We seem to have finished that section at noon, so we will break for the half-hour lunch break and then resume at 12:30. It's just reports. Thank you very much, everyone.
5.1. And then we now have a summary of all the decisions that were made today. So if we could scroll down a little bit, please, till we get to the very bottom. So we've added 1.71%, as Councillor Martman added correctly. So we are now looking at an approximate tax increase of 5.9%. And so for 2022, it's 5.9%. But as you can see in year 2023, you're now looking at a 4% increase. So that is, again, due to the positions not being a full year budgeted in 2022. Some of it's getting picked up in 2023. So that is where we are sitting at right now. We'll go away and process those numbers just to make sure that they are absolutely correct. And I guess it's up to Mr. Rudolph and Council if, because our plan is to come back on December 6th with bylaw for 3 readings. But we may want to have a recap meeting.
Your Worship, the idea, the schedule is to have the December 6th as the 3 readings. If you wanted a little more time, we could defer that to the 20th, I think is the next meeting. I'm not sure what the benefit of that is. We do have another finance meeting scheduled on the 15th of December, but that would give us very little time before the December 20th meeting. So if that's unless we hear otherwise, that's what the schedule will be, and we will be proceeding to do it that way.
We still do have to discuss the sanitation decision points as well. So once we calculate those, we will have to bring those to you as we had planned to bring all of the user rate bylaws for first 3 readings on the 6th. So we'll have to talk about how we're going to bring that back to Council.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. To my recollection, each year after Christmas, Finance comes back with Christmas presents saying they found some money here or found some money there. What sort of funding option, like possibilities are to come forward to that might actually lower that amount, maintaining what we've already asked for, though?
Right. So there is, through your worship to Councillor Bonner, we haven't received final growth numbers yet, but all indications are we're not going to receive much more than the 1.3 we have in the budget, but ultimately we won't know till March. So there may be some additional funds there. I'm guessing it's unlikely. I would not recommend this, but there is likely going to be a surplus, and that could be used to reduce the tax rates. However, if you just did that in 2022, you're going to shoot up 2023's percentage increase because it is a one-time funding source. So like off the top of my head, those are the two, the ones that I can think of, other than going back and cutting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Your Worship, on the sanitation, we may be able to add we have a GPC schedule for Monday. Perhaps we could schedule a special finance and audit around that somehow and bring that information to you on Monday.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy with the schedule suggested by Mr. Rudolph, staying on track with our dates. And I just want to acknowledge we knew this was going to be a tough year following COVID, and I wouldn't be in support of using surplus to lower the tax rate. I think the tax rate accurately reflects what the organization needs, and that's our job. So I'm comfortable with proceeding.
Anything further, Council? If not, thank you very much to staff, everyone. Appreciate.
Your Worship, we just need to see if there's questions.
Thank goodness. Second, do we have a seconder on adjournment? Seconder, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And lunch is across the hall.